If you like what we do here on Skiba News Nation, please like and subscribe, and also share with others so that we can grow the biggest truth-seeking community on the internet. Huge shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. We couldn't do this show without you, so I just wanted to say thank you. And if you want to help support us, go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation.
What it costs. I want to know what the truth is. And I hope that people, my son, anybody, if my name comes up, whether you like me, whether you agree with me or not, at least you can respect the fact that he's on a quest for truth. He's on a quest for truth.
Welcome to Skiba News Nation, bringing you unfiltered views, news, interviews, discussions, and more. And now, here's your host, Jeremiah Skiba, award-winning musician and son of Rob Skiba.
Changes every which way. You got to hold on to what you need. And if I hide myself away, how could I go?
Welcome to American Horror Story. Anyways, hey Skiba News Nation family, welcome to episode 89 of Skiba News Nation, your weekly source of the latest news, controversial topics, conspiracies, forgotten history, and so much more. I'm your host, Jeremiah Skiba, and today we're going to be talking about the Trump conviction and what does it mean for America. Tucker and Don Jr. bombshell interview, Dennis Quaid on why he's voting for Trump, Russia finds huge oil reserves in Antarctica, farmers kill 4.2 million chickens in Iowa, it's black and white logo month again, Mandela Effect, the movie, CEOs can be replaced with AI, Mastercard launches FacePay and HandPay, an all-new OPA'S corner, and for history's mysteries, we'll be talking about the Boeing whistleblower who died mysteriously. Was he murdered or sewer slided? And Pranking the Scammers Volume 5. Memes and much more, so subscribe and stay tuned. Now, as always, I'd like to introduce my great and insightful co-host, Mr. Jake Grant. Welcome, Jake. How are you doing?
Hey, Jeremiah. Doing pretty great. As you can see, I'm in another location this week. Got this giant Yahushua poster behind me. Yeah, doing good, man. How are you?
Good. Well, we actually got some exciting news for all you guys. We finished my dad's comic book, and we finished it yesterday, and I wanted to show you guys a couple pages. Here's one of them, and I don't want to give anything away, but here's the other one, and the main character is based on my dad, which is so awesome. And all we need to do now is have them printed, which is like the most expensive part. So if you guys want to help us print them, feel free to, if you felt led to help support us. We'll leave the donation links below, but other than that, I mean, it's been pretty great being able to finish that because he loved it so much.
Super cool, man. That thing looks awesome. Wow, I know
awesome.
people have been waiting, and now it's ready, huh?
Yep.
That's cool.
Yep. It's fulfilling knowing that I
Sweet.
was able to finish something that he started and he loved, and we don't plan on stopping here. That's the thing. So stay tuned for that.
Hey, and another note, upcoming just this June 20th through 23rd, we have HebrewFest. So wanted to let anybody who's not heard about it yet go and check out the website. It's going to be a blast. Get your tickets here at HebrewFest.net. And Jeremiah and I are both going to be there. We got a fantastic lineup for the event. Bryson Gray, Left and Right Ministries, Good Medicine, Lorvins. We got Simply Prodigal, Yours Truly. We got a whole bunch of bands there. It's going to be fantastic. There's going to be food. There's going to be hanging out around the campfire, camping. And if you want to set up as a vendor, you can request there. But if you want to get tickets, go ahead and jump over to HebrewFest.net. Scroll on down here and get your tickets today. This is going to be an event you don't want to miss. It's growing larger and larger. We already did our first, run of HebrewFest last year, had several hundred people out, and this year it's going to be even bigger and better. So I'm really looking forward to that, and looking forward to hanging out with you, Jeremiah. Man, that's going to be epic.
Yeah, man. They should put special guests, Skiba News Nation, Jeremiah Skiba, and Jake Grant, at the very bottom under the performers. Because we'll be there. If you guys want to be a part of Skiba News Nation, we can do a live with OPA here at the studio, and then we'll just stream back to them, and we can do something fun. I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go, right? But I'm really looking forward to that, and so is everybody that's coming with me up to this point. Oh, and also, did want to add this. On Facebook, on our Skiba News Nation Facebook, at the top, I have the HebrewFest event, and it makes it real easy to click. You can click to get tickets. You can click everything else. So Opa wanted to show you guys a really cool clip of a ball of lightning.
What?
Let's rewind that back. What is that bright blue sphere?
Please
And
tell
how
me
can
that
it
is
travel
real.
across the railroad tracks, throwing off sparks as it moves?
It's 100% real.
The internet's reaction blew Andre's mind.
That's from a show on the History Channel. Isn't that crazy? And they what they do is they get like an
Wow.
expert to like view the footage and see if it's real or not. And that one kind of like spooked me. And Opa has a theory on it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if some of the unidentified objects that people are seeing could be related to ball lightning, because ball lightning can appear anywhere, and it can go really fast, and it can turn at unbelievable angles. And I don't know. I think some of the observations are ball lightning. Not all of them, but some of them.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy to look at. It looks like something out of a sci-fi movie for sure, but I mean, I just want to understand why. Like, why is there just a random ball of lightning? When you think of lightning, it's like discharging from the earth, the negative and positive electrons and all that stuff, and then boom, it strikes. But like, how can it manifest like that, man?
It looks like it's just so much energy, See how you'll see like little sparks come down right there.
But
those are like.
But why specifically there? Like, that's such a weird place for that.
I know, and then
Let's rewind that back.
it just keeps going into the woods after that.
What is that bright blue sphere?
Now,
And
question:
how can it
if
travel
that
across the
thing
railroad
ran
tracks,
into
throwing
you,
off sparks as it moves?
You'd be a dead man.
yeah,
The internet's reaction.
would it just like burn like a lightsaber hole through your body, or would you just get like zapped? Like, what would that look like if it actually went through organic material? You know what I mean?
It would burn you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised none of the grass was catching fire, but who knows?
Well, it looks pretty wet there, so I don't think it's going to catch anything fire.
Yep. Well, cool, Opa. All right, well, you got some great current news for me today?
Yes, I do. Let's get into it.
All right, man.
All right, guys, this week we have some very controversial news. We have some stuff that happened right after we recorded our episode last week that we didn't get to cover last week regarding Trump and the trial and his conviction. We're going to talk about the implications of that. We're going to talk a little bit about, what this month has been designated and how it's a total agenda. And also, we're going to be talking a little bit about AI this week, as you guys saw in Jeremiah's preview earlier. But just to start us off, I thought this was very interesting, and I thought it was something that, can really help our mindset, right? Your mouth can literally block all that God has for you. It says the greatest snare in the wilderness is murmuring and complaining. Like the children of Israel, they were walking around the wilderness until they basically died off because all of their complaining caused them to forego the blessings that the Almighty had for them. So walking around and complaining, right, over your present situation before you reach the place that God has for you. Remember, instead of 4, it took 40 years for the Israelites to reach the promised land because they were found grumbling. So sometimes you are simply delaying God's promises to work in your life because of your mouth. And I think that's very interesting because no matter what situation we find ourselves in today, our mindset is so important. And the way that we talk about the bad things that happen to us, the way that we go through the trials, in the end, kind of defines how big the blessing on the back end of that. And reminds me of a current situation in our politics here in the United States of America, how right now Donald Trump has become the first convicted felon who was previously a president. Many people with this particular sentiment, which says, this is the most powerful piece of political art I have ever seen. And what it is it's, some political figures, covering up and restraining Lady Justice, right? This is the woman that stands outside of a courthouse and represents equality and justice and whatever. And a lot of people feel this way after what has happened to Donald Trump. And we're going to look at that for a second, because this is definitely on a lot of people's radars. Check this out. So the Trump trial live updates. Trump found guilty on all counts in a historic case. Trump was found guilty on 34 felony counts in a hush money trial. Very interesting. Check this out. Donald Trump's campaign after the trial raised over $200 million in just 3 days since the guilty felony verdict. And that's what his son, Eric, is claiming. Very, very interesting. Now, when you look at where Donald Trump was actually convicted, the district, it was one of those extremely liberal judges, extremely liberal districts. So you know that the people that they were calling in for jury duty likely absolutely hated Trump's guts. Apparently, the Trump legal team asked to have their location moved multiple times to a more fair location, so that the jury would be better representing people that could see his side of the case. But this ties into something I think is very interesting that came out last year when he was actually, sent the warrants and they were calling him in to the legal process. And it is this: the Trump arrest prompts Jesus comparisons and spiritual warfare. Now, this is an article from 2013, and I think I actually even talked about it. But this should make people raise an eyebrow, because whenever you see comparisons and parallels with the Christ figure, what does that lead to? And so I wanted to read this article from April 5, 2023. It says this: for the most devout Trump conspiracy theorists, there are no coincidences, and timing is everything. So when ex-president Donald Trump was arraigned Tuesday on charges that he falsified business records to obscure hush money payments in an effort to influence the 2016 election, some of his most ardent followers quickly noted the court appearance came during Christianity's most sacred week, Holy Week. It was during the Easter holiday, right? Mm-hmm. When many Christians commemorated Christ's crucifixion and resurrection. Seems there was someone else who was tortured and crucified this week, read one post on Gab, a platform popular with Trump supporters. A similar post on Telegram put Trump's case in apocalyptic terms: good versus evil, biblical times, divine timing. Comparisons likening Trump to Christ were among the top online narratives about the Republicans' former president and his criminal charges circulating in the last several days, according to an analysis of online social media content conducted by Signal Labs, a media intelligence firm, on behalf of the Associated Press. Signal's analysis found tens of thousands of mentions calling Trump a martyr. The number more than doubled immediately after Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene linked the persecution of Trump to the persecution of Christ during an interview. So Trump pleaded not guilty, and of course, we are far in the future to the point where he has actually been convicted. This is all regarding 34 felony counts alleging he hid payments made during the 2016 presidential campaign to two women, an adult film star, actor, and former Playboy model. So it continues on here to make the comparisons with Christ and Trump. Eyebrow raise, right? Jesus was arrested and murdered by the Roman government, she said. There have been many people throughout history that have been arrested and persecuted by radical, corrupt governments, and Trump is basically this next Jesus figure, right? And it's beginning today in New York City. The comparison was denounced by the Episcopal Church, right? Just swinging through here. They see this as spiritual warfare, and Trump is on the side of the angels. In this view, Trump is politically a savior. He is going to restore America, and he will rise from the ashes in November despite the persecution and the suffering. Trump has encouraged such beliefs by claiming he is uniquely qualified to lead the country. This reminds me, actually, in some funny ways, of some of those clips where Trump turns to the camera and he's like, "I'm the chosen one. I'm the guy. I'm the chosen one." Do you remember seeing any of those, Jeremiah?
Of Trump?
Yeah. He was like, I'm the only one. I'm the chosen one. I could probably insert some of those clips.
Add that to it, and add a lot of other things to it. So somebody had to do it. I am the chosen one. I am the chosen one. I am the chosen one. Somebody had to do it. So I'm taking on China. I'm taking on China on trade. And you know what? We're winning because we're the piggy bank. We're the one that all these countries, including the European Union, wants to rob and takes advantage of. European Union, $200 billion. China, more than $500 billion. Sorry. I was put here by people. I was put here by people to do a great job. And that's what I'm doing. And nobody's done a job like I've done.
But it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you think about it, who else is going to stop doing what they're doing? I mean, they're running this country right into the ground, in my opinion. And
yeah,
he's not from the political circles, so of course they don't like him. So he really could be one of the only things. I mean, I don't know. My dad voted for him. I'm going to vote for him. I agree more with what he stands for than what anybody else stands for. So,
yeah, he's definitely the best American president we've ever had in terms of pushing forward particular conservative agendas. And that's why they're painting the support of Trump and coalescing it with the Christian nationalist movement that they're painting as, homegrown terrorists, basically. But the comparisons with Trump and a martyr and a Christ figure are very, very interesting to me. And with that said, let's go ahead and look at this video, which is Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump Jr. responding to the Trump verdict. Check this out.
Everyone has to get involved.
Yeah.
And again, that's both sides. I mean, you have to have people running for office. I'm not talking about president or Congress. Run for your school boards. I mean, that's perhaps the thing.
Okay, well, some very choice words in there, kind of echoing your sentiments, Jeremiah. I think it's important to understand that the hypocrisy in the indictment of Donald Trump regarding 2016 election interference is so crazy, especially after we see what happened in 2020 regarding the actual federal government interfering with social media accounts and what can and cannot be posted in the case of Hunter Biden type topics, and also Donald Trump being kicked off Twitter, and how are all those things not leading to election interference in the case of 2020, and then we see the hush act when it came to anything coming against Biden and exposing his family's corruption regarding Ukraine, and man, it's just so hypocritical, the system that we live in. And I think the hypocrisy and the fact that they actually convicted Trump is designed to steal hope from people. And while I personally disengage myself from the political game, I don't believe we should put hope in a single man, right? I do think that this whole situation, this whole dramatic act, has been set up to steal the hope from people in regards to their ability to interact with the system that they live in, to change things for the positive. And I would say, the biggest downfall is that we start to focus on the national scene and lose hope that anything good can be done, and that distracts us from the good that we can do locally. And so with that said, Rand Paul actually is warning that there might be potential uprisings coming from the Trump verdict. Check this clip out.
This is Dabu7. A lot of people out there closely watching what's going on around the Trump situation, seeing that it is all tied into an election where there's debates and all this stuff ongoing right now, and we have an RNC coming up, and Trump due back in court there on July 11th, just 4 days before the RNC goes into motion. And now there's talk of what's going to happen at these events. You have people like Rand Paul going around doing interviews now, warning that there's going to be war in the streets. Those are very bold words. Some are trying to flip it and take it even further, saying race war and all this, but we know they've been trying to play this card for a long time. The question is how many people are going to bite on certain things out here? Rand Paul goes on to say that he's worried about strife. And he says, I worry about war in the streets. I worry about 50% of the public believing that the court system is going to be used against them. I worry when half the country thinks that we won't be treated fairly. What happens and how people react, we don't know. The time's ticking down. He says, if you look at records violations and you look at Hillary Clinton, the $8 million expense, they slapped her on the wrist. She got an $8,000 fine. And now Trump getting hit with all this money and fines and now facing potential jail time or whatever else they could possibly throw at him. Maher has also said the same thing. He actually said, if Trump goes to jail, there will be a racial civil war. I don't know why he wants to tie in the racial part into this, because Trump has supporters of all colors, all backgrounds, all that. They always want to try to work something in where they can in a crisis. And all I can say is people be smart out there about these events. I look to potentially have coverage on the RNC and or other events that go down throughout this year. But eyes on July 11th from here.
Check out this next clip of Dennis Quaid talking about why he is going to be voting for Donald Trump.
What do you think of Trump?
I think I'm going to vote for him.
Really?
Yeah, in the next election. Yes, I am.
Are you ready for the blowback?
Well, yeah.
If inevitably comes
well,
with Trump?
you know, I think this election, everybody's got to, I think they're going to take a side or whatever, but it just seems to be, it just makes sense. I was ready not to vote for Trump until what I saw is more than politics. I see a weaponization of our justice system.
Yeah.
And a challenge to our Constitution, us as Americans, that I don't think we're going to have. And, you know, Trump is the most investigated person probably in the history of the world. And they haven't been able to really get him. People might call him an asshole, but he's my asshole.
He's our a-hole, is what he says. He's my a-hole.
he's my a-hole. Oh, man. You know, you can see how the national sentiment, at least for the Conservative Party, they have no other hope to challenge the corruption that is the Biden regime and the liberal agendas being pushed, the swamp, so to speak. unless Trump actually wins. And I've heard political commentators say that they're literally willing to crawl over glass to vote for Donald Trump. And, you know, with the whole, you know, comparisons I'm showing with him being a martyr and a Christ figure for the conservative party, you know, of course, for me, raises that eyebrow, you know, particularly because, you know, if Donald Trump does get ushered into office and all the felony charges are dropped because a sitting president cannot be impeded in any way, I'm going to be watching very carefully because there were certain agendas that were pushed through while Donald Trump was in office that unfortunately led to the situation that we have in the world today regarding the medical mandates and such. But, you know, Donald Trump has said very good things. He has also not made any official stances or statements regarding guys like Julian Assange, which to me is a little interesting. You know, I want to see, you know, some more concrete discussion about, you know, pardoning people that exposed the corruption of the American government. But also, there's been a lot exposed recently regarding Biden's corruption. And I know in 2016, Trump was pioneering and shouting Hillary for prison, right? Mm-hmm. And that never really happened. But we know that there's absolute corruption and political manipulation happening in the Democratic Party, even in the Republican Party. And if Trump truly stands for justice, if he makes it into office, I would like to see him implement actual justice and call for these people who've basically meddled with the integrity of our country's political system, who've been in it for profit for years and years, to actually be tried and convicted for the crimes and traitorous nature of their political leanings. And so, you know, it's just a very interesting day and age. Once again, this is 2024. There's a lot of actors on the political stage right now because it is election year. And so we need to have our head on a swivel. So here's a look at Jill Biden's gaslighting on The View and how it was taken to atomic levels. Check this out.
Now it's time for Lefties Losing It. And you'd think there was enough weapon-grade crazy on The View from the miserable wackadoodle hosts. But no, the ladies of The View are keen to prove that misery loves company, and they invite other lefties to lose it on their program, including the First Lady.
Can you imagine if we put any more Republicans on the Supreme Court? No. We will lose all of our rights.
Not hysterical at all. We will lose all our rights, Jill, will we? What? We're going to lose our free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, all gone, because we know how much Republicans hate freedom. But brace yourself, the gaslighting and projection is about to be turned up to atomic levels.
There have been people that have thought President Biden shouldn't even debate President Trump just due to the fact that Donald Trump will gaslight, he overtalks, yes. There are no guardrails. So,
stalks.
Yeah, well, yeah. I happen to believe it's really important, more than ever, to have a debate with guardrails. What is the strategy that the president has going into this? Any tips you'd have for a debate that we could pull off where we could actually hear our candidates?
You know, they've built that in where they're going to turn off those mics so that somebody can't ramble or scream at somebody. You know, not that my husband would be the one doing that. No. And so that's already been negotiated. And, you know, I think the American people deserve a debate because you need to see your choices. You need to see Trump, and you need to see the president, and you need to see the differences. And my husband's, and you're going to see how smart he is and the experience he has. And then you'll see somebody who, like you're saying, I'm going to use Joy's words, can't put a sentence together.
Right. Yeah, it's the President Trump that can't put a sentence together, not this bloke.
Anyway, the best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to anyway, from Charlotte, one and another, and Joan Shingang, I'm going to pronounce right, Shanga, $159 billion left. The idea that Los Angeles and what am I doing here?
Yes, Dr. Jill. It's Trump who can't put a sentence together.
Oh man,
I love that segment. Lefties losing it on. I love whoever that is from Australia, Sky News.
Sky News Australia.
Well, that's Fox News, owned by the same people, but Rupert Murdoch still is in charge of it. That's why it's so conservative. It's a fun fact. But it's very much Fox News. I get more information over there than I get from here. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. And some of Jill's claims regarding Biden and what he's accomplished, it's just so like, come on, lady. I know he's your husband, and I know you should probably support him, but there comes a point where you're not even close to reality. You know? Oh man.
They think we're stupid. They think we're very, very stupid, and it's not the case.
Well, that's the Handbook for Radicals, kind of the book that circulated regarding how to achieve political domination by basically choosing a lie, and the louder and more passionate you shout it, eventually people believe the lie.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So very, very interesting. Here's a picture here of how Hunter Biden's jury has been set. It includes 6 men, 6 women, and 1 former Secret Service employee. Very interesting. So this just happened recently. So I'm interested to see if Biden's son is acquitted and Trump is convicted, because how twisted the system is. It reminds me of that scripture that says, they will call good evil and evil good. And this would be the perfect kind of comparative example of how the justice system has been twisted for the benefit of the left-leaning politically.
Yep.
And man,
you know, let's have like class warfare now. That's just a fact. When you're wealthy, you have more resources to deploy towards anything. When you're not wealthy, when you're poor, you have very few resources to deploy. Therefore, you are forced to pick and choose where you're going to allocate resources, time, money, etc. The opportunity gaps between low-income students and their peers already existed, of course, but the pandemic only worsened this. Over and over and over again, dozens of times I've found this referenced in the Bible. It's a threefold problem. By the way, in the Bible, there's always 3 things that are going to get you, and that is war, plague, and famine, and they come together over and over and over again. Dozens of times I've found this referenced in the Bible. It's a threefold problem you got to solve. War, like people trying to kill each other, maybe even trying to kill you, depending on the situation. Famine, there's no food to eat. And plague, disease, widespread disease. Now, let's look again at Mr. Klaus Schwab. At least 4 billion useless eaters shall be eliminated by the year 2050 by means of limited wars, okay, that's war, organized epidemics of fatal, rapid-acting diseases, that's plague, and starvation, that's famine. Energy, food, and water shall be kept at subsistence levels for the non-elite, starting with the white populations of Western Europe and North America, and then spreading to other races. The populations of Canada, Western Europe, and the United States will be decimated more rapidly than on other continents until the world's population reaches a manageable level of 1 billion, of which 500 million will consist of Chinese and Japanese races, selected because they are a people who have been regimented for centuries and who are accustomed to obeying authority without question. The next chapter, the next paragraph. From time to time, there shall be artificially contrived food and water shortages and medical care to remind the masses that their very existence depends on the goodwill of the Committee of 300. Oh, from time to time, there shall be artificially contrived food and water shortages, but you don't need to prepare. You can just keep playing at preparedness. You can keep living in the wrong place, dedicating 2% of your annual income to preparedness, so you can check that box. And when I say prepare, what you hear is buy another Glock and another plate carrier and go to the range once a month and shoot at static targets inside of a little box. Creator of the universe. Washington is not looking for a shooting war with Russia, National Security Spokesperson John Kirby has said. U.S. President Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. * does not want the standoff with Russia over Ukraine to trigger a global war, the White House National Security Spokesperson has said. John Kirby was speaking days after the White House confirmed that Biden had granted Kyiv permission to use U.S.-supplied weapons for strikes deep inside Russia. Ukraine had requested an easing of restrictions on the use of foreign arms after Russian troops launched a new offensive in Ukraine's eastern Kharkov region last month, which is in the northeast of Ukraine, I believe, capturing several border villages. Quote, "We've been concerned about escalation since the very beginning of this war, and those concerns remain valid," Kirby told ABC News on Sunday. Quote, "The president has said he does not want to be responsible for starting World War III. We're not looking for conflict with Russia, another nuclear power." Kirby said that Biden, quote, "had understood all the ramifications," end quote, of allowing Kyiv to use American weapons for counterfire purposes. He reiterated that Ukrainians were only permitted to target bases, artillery positions, and other military sites that, quote, Russians were using to create some sort of buffer zones. And this BS article goes on from here, the last paragraph of which is, "In an interview with U.S. journalist Tucker Carlson in February, Putin said it is unthinkable for anyone to drag the world into a new global war, which would, quote, put the whole of humanity on the brink of survival." But don't worry, guys. Biden said we don't want World War III, which means de facto we won't have World War III. How do I know this? We can look at his track record. Bidenomics, working great. Inflation, very low. Purchasing power of the dollar, very high. U.S. energy production, we got way more than we can use. Way more than we can use. We're definitely not having brownouts and shortages everywhere. Green tech and renewable energy, solid investment, really good for the environment, working great. Also, totally not a pedo, even though his own daughter took showers with him, according to her journal, and he is on camera sniffing and caressing children repeatedly. So, don't believe the hype. This guy, you can take his words straight to the bank, man. So per Biden, no World War III, don't have to worry about it. Everybody go back to living your little lives. No reason to be prepared at all. However, in contrast to what Mr. Biden may have said, we have this from RT, Russia Today. First French troops on the way to Ukraine. So in Ukraine, we've had American personnel for at least a decade. Shh, don't tell anyone. So then that's Ukraine and America. And then in 2014, was it Russia took Crimea? And then in 2022, February 24th, 2022, Russia started their special military operation in Ukraine. And so that gets Ukraine, Russia, and America all inside of these borders. And then Ukraine is being supported by NATO et al., which also involves, like, let's see, Poland is bought in on this. Oh, and Belarus on the Russian side. Okay, so that's 5 countries. And then France, which we're talking about right now, and Germany, and the UK, and I think even Canada has kicked a couple of bucks into the pot for Ukraine. Who am I forgetting? Oh, the Baltic states and the Nordic states. And so you've then had Sweden and Finland have joined NATO. So we're only at 12 countries right now, wrapped up in just the Ukraine war. So definitely not a world war. It's not a world war. There's only 12 of 187 countries involved. Like, we'd need at least 90 countries, 94 countries to have half of it, to get us past that 50% mark. Is SOE in here? What's up? What up, Bear Nation? Hello from SOE. What's up, SOE? Good stuff there. Made in America, by the way. To this article from Russia Today, Kyiv has already prepared the necessary paperwork for foreign instructors at its military bases. The first group of French military instructors, kind of like special military advisors, right? Special military advisors. We're not doing warfare. We're advising on warfare from the front lines with soldiers. Got it. The first group of French military instructors are on their way to Ukraine, senior Ukrainian MP Alexei Gan said on Friday. This comes just days after Ukraine's top commander, Alexander Saris, announced that he had completed paperwork facilitating the presence of French personnel in the country. Quote, "My sources informed me that the first group of French instructors is already on its way to Ukraine," said to the Ukrainian parliament and delegate to the parliamentary blah, 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 who cares. The idea of deploying NATO boots on the ground remains a contentious issue within the US-led bloc, whose members maintain that they are not parties to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Moscow, which would be the capital of Russia, by the way, however, has said that it views Ukraine's Western backers as direct participants, stressing that Western-supplied weapons are being used to strike targets on Russian soil. Oh, remember, we only got 12 nations, but Ukraine is getting a whole bunch of, Russia is getting a whole bunch of their munitions from North Korea, so that gets us at 13. And then Russia supplies Iran, 14, which started some asymmetric warfare stuff in Israel, 15, using the Houthis and Hamas and Hezbollah, which are not nation states, but are bad actors associated with said nation states, which brings in Israel 16, and then now the Palestinians that don't actually have a nation state, but they want one, even though Hezbollah says it will never accept the terms of a 2-state solution. So 17 asterisk. We only got 17 countries wrapped up into this so far. In February, French President Emmanuel Macron said that he could not rule out the possibility of NATO member states sending troops to Ukraine in the future, although French officials soon clarified that he meant non-combat personnel. Macron later argued that NATO should adopt a policy of, quote, strategic ambiguity towards Russia. The French leader has been working behind the scenes to forge a coalition of countries willing to dispatch trainers to Kyiv, according to Bloomberg, reported on Friday. Nothing to see here. There's only 17-ish countries involved in this totally not World War III thing going on. Okay, see, Papa, proxy participants, 100%, man, 100%. 13,000 illegal aliens have had their asylum cases terminated, according to the data. Conversely, massive amnesty Since President Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. * took office in January 2020, 77% of asylum seekers have been allowed to remain in the country. The Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse said there's a backlog of nearly 3.6 million unresolved asylum claims. So everything's fine. Oh, and by the way, don't worry, because we've got good reporting on this as well. The only people coming across the porous southern border, and no person is illegal, the newcomers, those seeking asylum, it's just women and children who love America and love God and want to come here and work hard and pay their taxes. So there's nothing we got to worry about here. It's fine. I mean, it's not like it's a bunch of military-aged males from China and Russia and the Baltic states that are just waltzing across the border, that are in full battle rattle. It's not like that's happening. It's not like it's hundreds of thousands of known Chinese military-aged males. That would never happen. It's not like there's been coordinated attacks on the power infrastructure, now the homes of certain personnel within the special operations community. It's not like the, what is it? Oh yeah, the munitions plant in McAlester, Oklahoma hasn't had 4 different vans filled with Chinese people driving around its borders and taking pictures of it over the last month. It's not like our national defense and infrastructure is being probed daily by small teams who are probably preparing for asymmetric warfare. We would never allow that to happen at all. And so, again, who cares about preparedness? Prepping is stupid. Why do I need extra food? When I run out of food, I'll just drive over to the Target, probably get me a Starbucks on the way. Yeah, pick up some, I don't know, Stouffer's lasagna, whatever it is that people buy at the store. I'm retarded and don't grocery shop and try and eat as much food off of my property as I can. So I don't really know what the normies do. But yeah, there's nothing to see here, guys. Everything's fine. We've only added between 20 and 40 million undocumented people because no person is illegal. And it's not like this current regime in the White House has spent your taxpayer dollars to bus and fly these people into the United States of America, because that would be poor stewardship of the resources that we put into their hand. And remember, if Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. says that it's good to go, then y'all, it's good to go. So I wouldn't worry too much about it at all. I mean, it's not like they who have come across the southern border are preparing for coordinated decapitation strikes and attacks on American infrastructure. It's not like, all of our SCADA systems are infected with Stuxnet. It's not like the grid is incredibly fragile. It's not like there's ransomware attacks taking place on hospitals and pharmacies all over the country. It's nothing to see here. It's a nothing burger. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it too much.
On another topic, check this out. Russia just found huge oil reserves in Antarctica. Apparently, in the British territory in Antarctica, according to evidence submitted to the UK in the House of Commons Environment Audit Committee, the reserve uncovered contains around 511 billion barrels worth of oil, 10 times the North Sea's output over the last 50 years. So I thought this was very interesting, particularly because it mentions Antarctica is governed by the Antarctic Treaty, first signed in December 1st, 1959, which states that no single country owns the territory and designates the region as a continent devoted to peace and science, meaning all the oil development in the area are prohibited. So I'm curious, now that Russia is sharing that they've found, black money down under the ice, it makes me wonder, is America going to send some freedom to Antarctica, Jeremiah? Do you think so?
We'll see. I don't know.
Oh, man. I would not be surprised. Here's another interesting article. Farmers must kill 4.2 million chickens after the bird flu hits Iowa egg farm. Oh, man. What this reminds me of more than 4 million chickens in Iowa having to be killed, reminds me a lot of one last year where there were a bunch of chicken farms that burned down. There was also a bunch of mass slaughterings due to other contrived flu scares or whatever. But, there was that book that came out. It was apparently falsely attributed to Carl Schwab. And the book said this. It said, at least 4 billion useless eaters shall be eliminated by the year 2050 by means of limited wars, organized epidemics of fatal rapid-acting diseases, and starvation. Energy, food, and water shall be kept at subsistence levels for the non-elite, starting with the white populations of Western Europe and the North America, and then spreading to other races. The populations of Canada, Western Europe, and the United States will be decimated more rapidly than on other continents, until the world population reaches a manageable level of 1 billion. of which 500 million will consist of Chinese and Japanese races selected because they are people who have been regimented for centuries and who are accustomed to obeying authority without question. So what I thought was very interesting here is organized epidemics, right? And disease and starvation. And I believe it also, in the book, mentioned contrived food shortages, which is exactly what we seem to be seeing. And while it might not have actually been Carl Schwab that wrote COVID-19, the Great Reset book or whatever, somebody wrote it, and they're pointing out that this is definitely an idea.
So sorry, Charlie is on my desk. Sorry about that, but
Well,
you can see his tail
yeah,
now. He's clicking on my buttons. Sorry, he just wanted to say hi.
He just, I mean, you're going to have to get one of those.
Oh, here he comes.
Like speaking panels so that he can come up and actually communicate with the audience.
I
Kind of
mean,
like they have for dogs.
Yeah, he likes it. You poor thing. You don't get any attention, do you? Anyway,
Yeah,
sorry about that, Jake.
He'll find the button that says catnip, and he'll just be pressing it over and over. Catnip. Catnip.
Now.
Treat.
Now. Pet me.
Give me treats. Worship me. Worship me. Oh, man. Cats, right? So anyways, we have once again the rainbow wave, the stolen rainbow wave, washing over the world, and all of the public companies that are, woke or whatever. And so I wanted to start off with this interesting video from Jordan Peterson. Check this out.
Pride Month. Well, what are we celebrating? First of all, how about we don't celebrate pride? Pride's a cardinal sin. And you might say, well, they don't mean pride. They mean it's a group of oppressed people, and now they're just finding their identity and they're getting some security in that identity. And so what they mean by pride is security in that identity. It's like the word's pride. That's the word that was chosen. And it's pride in relationship, as far as I can tell, to nothing but hedonistic self-gratification. It's like your identity is going to be your sexual desire. That's your identity, your sexual desire. So that means you've reduced your identity to the most immature and hedonistic part of you. The part that would exploit someone else for your own gratification, for example. The part that would exploit you for your own gratification. And now that's your identity. And now that's what we celebrate. Yeah, no.
Oh boy. Once again, we're back at this time of the year where they dedicate a whole month to sodomites.
Yep.
And it's basically, it's crazy how they're trying to interweave this mentality and this alternative sexual lifestyle into the fabric of our holiday system. You have games, you have corporate social media accounts, you have all these things. You walk into Walmart, it's just like blasted by all of the agenda. And I wanted to show this. It's it's interesting that right now, Judge Not has become the anthem for a society that loves their sin more than they love God. And they're making a sexual deviancy, a kind of identifying factor, and they're trying to groom a whole generation of people because, it's not a genetic thing, it's a social engineering thing. Because even if you come from the evolutionary mindset, being a sodomite would have been bred out of existence long ago, right? And so it's definitely, you see a percentage rise in today's world, not because there have always been that many people of that persuasion, but rather we are training each generation, starting with young children and the movies we show them, to have a propensity for deviancy.
About our peaceful silent protests. If you look at the boxes at the bottom, we're doing all black and white. That's what we're going to do every Pride Month. If you look on social media, all of our logos, no color. It's our silent, peaceful protest against this month being something that we don't stand for.
It's a great analogy for the truth of the world. It's black and white, right? It's not a rainbow of color. It's not a rainbow of perspective. There's right and there's wrong.
Yep.
There's truth and there's the lie. There's good, there's evil. And I think that's what the black and white to me could profoundly kind of represent in this month of colors, so to speak.
Yeah.
But of course, I love sharing Babylon Bee articles during this time of the year where we're so overloaded with this political agenda, this social engineering agenda that is designed, by the way, to decrease the population of the earth, falling in lines with the Georgia Guidestones and, you know, all that kind of stuff. They believe we're all useless eaters, and so if we procreate into death, well, those are contradictory terms, right? If we have relations and it doesn't lead to life, it doesn't lead to fruitfulness, then our society declines in number, and we're already on the brink of population collapse. And so them heaping on, oh, everybody be gay, really doesn't help the population in the future. But, you know, really, we don't have to focus too much on this topic. We don't have to, you know, show the gross pictures of people flaunting their bodies in the streets and showing their pride, right? But what we do have to realize is that, you know, let's just outpopulate them. You know, like in just a few generations, your genetics are going to disappear from the earth. And unfortunately, that's the curse from the Almighty that's promised to the people who, you know, enter into the depraved mind, is that you literally will not have anybody representing you in the future because you've X'd yourself out of existence. And but here's a Babylon Bee article. Sesame Street airs a 4-hour-long special where the Count counts all 471 genders. In New York, children's show Sesame Street introduces a new segment to help teach children modern values in counting, where the character the Count counts all of the genders. It started out simply enough. The Count pointed to a boy and said, 1. Ah, ah, ah! Then he pointed to a girl and said, 2. Ah, ah, ah! And then he continued to count genders for hours and hours, pointing at different genders and counting. He got all the way up to 471 in the 4-hour special, which then closed with the song, "One of these things is not like the others."
That's funny.
Where the Muppets found a Republican hiding in Sesame Street and burned down his business. The Muppets burned down the Republican business. Oh man. 7! He said a few minutes into the counting of the genders while pointing at a Muppet dressed like a demi-boy. 91! The Count said about an hour later. This is a two-spirit dragonkin! Oh, man. The episode was sponsored by the number 7 and the letters LGBTQ.
And also brought to you by Pfizer.
Oh man. Okay. One more Babylon Bee article. Here we go. I like the sponsorship comment there, Jeremiah. That was poignant. Archaeologists uncover companies' rainbow logos from Sodom and Gomorrah. Israel. Archaeologists excavating in the Jordan Rift Valley have uncovered what they believe are the rainbow logos used by companies to promote Pride Month in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Samples have been sent to the University of Cambridge for further analysis and, if verified, could prove to be one of the most obvious finds in biblical history. It's kind of big news that we found the exact locations of Sodom and Gomorrah, Dr. Henrietta Toombs told journalists with National Geographic magazine. But the quality of artifacts we found also indicates a super perverted society of groomers, which was to be expected. According to the Israel Antiquities Authority, researchers have unearthed special edition LGBT wheels, casks of pride wine, and rainbow-colored pottery vessels that once contained fig cakes. In addition, a slew of nude statues were discovered in Sodom's town square, which experts are calling remarkably gay. Oh, man. At publishing time, archaeologists also believe they have found the remains of Zoar, another of the ancient cities of the plain. of which Sodom and Gomorrah were a part. Unfortunately, the artifacts are shockingly homophobic. Oh, man. So anyways, it's just so interesting. I wanted to show this picture. It's so here's Mercedes-Benz changing their logo at the beginning of this month here in the U.S., in the Western world. Here's Cisco. Here's Lenovo. Here's Bethesda. Well, guess what? Here's the same logos in the Middle East accounts that are still not changed to the rainbow colors of the Pride Month agenda. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Why aren't they showing Pride over there, I wonder? I don't know. Maybe because their particular culture, shuns that particular immorality, and they have a strong basis of family, building. I don't know. Like, who knows the answer? But anyways, so I thought that was just, crazy to see, how once again, they're heaping on top of the rainbow cake more of their propaganda. They want us all to be gay. They want us all to live in the cities. They don't want us to be married or have a family or have children. They want us to be completely bought into the medical and political system that is shoved down our throats. And in the end, what do we look like when we follow all of their commands? We look like a transgender dragonkin, castrated person that lives in a tiny apartment and goes to their 9-to-5 job, and then dies and gives all their money to some kind of university to perpetuate more of the indoctrination. Man, what a day and age. And
it's not from toxoplasmosis. I guarantee you that.
Hey, we're praying for all the cat lovers too, man. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, man. All right, so guys, we have another video I wanted to share here. This is a 1993 kids cartoon that tried to warn us all regarding the ingredients in our food. And did you ever see the Animaniacs growing up, guys? What did you think about the Animaniacs?
I did watch it when I was at friends' houses, but during that time, I don't think we had cable. So I watched it a little bit as an adult, but it wasn't quite the same. But I love the animation.
Also, it was a competitor to Disney. That was a DreamWorks Steven Spielberg thing.
Or Warner Brothers or something.
I always remember thinking the Animaniacs was a funnier show, and it rarely came on whatever TV I was watching. But whenever it did came on, I remember getting hype. And so whenever I see that they were sharing truth about the nonsense of the food ingredients and all the stuff that they put into our bodies, and they literally were speaking truth, like, you put it in your belly till you explode and rot, right? It's like, man, they were sharing some good truth in that cartoon back in the day. Anyways, in terms of medical deception, the things that they put into our body, here's an interesting article. The CA to Fauci, you steamrolled medical ethics. Lawmakers grilled Anthony Fauci on the COVID-19 response while the hearing is taking place. One California doctor even calling out Fauci, saying, "You steamrolled medical ethics." So just an interesting event.
Anthony Fauci's testimony before Congress about the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It got very heated at moments. Here's an exchange between Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene and Fauci.
We should be recommending you to be prosecuted. We should be writing a criminal referral because you should be prosecuted for crimes against humanity. You belong in prison, Dr. Fauci.
Now, for much of her questioning before the House Oversight Subcommittee on COVID-19 today, Green refused to call him doctor and called him Mr. Fauci, saying he does not deserve to have a medical license. She pointed out that NIH scientists made $710 million in royalties from drug makers and allegedly tried to keep that fact from the public. Green also got Fauci to acknowledge that 6 feet social distancing and masking of children was not based in science. Listen.
This is your own email where you said the typical mask you buy in the drugstore is not really effective in keeping out virus. I do not recommend that you wear a mask. This is your email. This is your own words. But yet children all over America were forced to wear masks. Healthy children forced to wear masks, muzzled.
Green also said that while Americans had their lives upended by Fauci's COVID rules, he can be seen not social distancing without a mask at a baseball game, you see there, where he threw out the first pitch. Now, shortly after that exchange, Dr. Azadeh Khatibi called out Fauci, saying doctors like her know he steamrolled medical ethics in America. She was asked to be removed. Look at that exchange.
Doctors like me.
And joining us now to the show is Dr. Azadeh Khatibi. Doctor, thank you so much for being here. Tell us what happened in Congress today and what made you speak up in that moment. And then Jamie Raskin says, take that Starbucks with you. Like, really? Meanwhile, other doctors were nodding their heads in agreement with what you had just said.
Yeah. By the way, it was a chamomile tea that I had.
Okay.
Trying to keep as calm as possible. I didn't go there planning to speak out. I didn't want to speak out, although I feel like at a certain point when you have injustice in America or anywhere kind of become enmeshed or entangled within the laws of the system, then it becomes important to act with some resistance and use your voice to speak out. And but I actually, I like people following rules. I like to follow rules. Generally, doctors are rule followers. But I had to speak out, especially when Dr. Fauci was still using words like being safe, like the word safe. I mean, as a surgeon, I never used the word safe with a patient ever about any procedure I was doing with them. So to have him use this, what I think of as archaic language of safety around medical interventions is still really dangerous. And so I think he needs to be, at this point, in terms of taking accountability and dissecting and discussing these things, much, much more nuanced than he was. And then I heard him gloss over mandates and ignore the whole ethics question in his testimony. And that is a lack of accountability as a physician, as a doctor. You should be delving into these things, especially in a time when, you say it was such an emergency. So him glossing over that and the mandates was really and should be infuriating to all. And then there was some discussion about the great smart doctors that he was working with. And I also felt like in this post-mortem of our COVID chaos times, there wasn't any discussion about there were other great smart doctors who completely disagreed with him. And why isn't he at that point, trying to balance those different perspectives and viewpoints and bring them all together and be able to hold them as in his testimony? He wasn't doing that. And so especially because of the medical ethics question, especially because I know he ignored like Scott Atlas, who was coming at him with data, and Scott Atlas reports, he told me, well, most people don't agree with you, Scott. Like, that kind of ignoring, he hasn't taken accountability for
Right.
it. And that's why I spoke out. That's why I spoke out.
Well, and all of the censorship that was going on at the time, like you said, doctors' voices were shut out. You're a doctor in the state of California. Anybody who was in California knows what happened here. Seeing those images of those kids, healthy kids being masked. I had a pit in my stomach because my child was 3 years old at the time, and getting her to wear a mask, a healthy child to be in school, just that. And then doctors were afraid to speak out for the fact of losing their licenses, even though they knew what was right. I mean, I had a friend who got one shot, and then the doctor was like, you should not get the second shot. It's not working well with her body. She has some other issues. They said you could possibly have a stroke, but I cannot give you an exemption. These were the kinds of things that were happening in the state of California. It's nearly impossible.
Looks like Fauci is going to be turned into the scapegoat of the medical agenda pushed over the past, 3 or 4 years, which is very interesting since he was just such a big proponent. I remember seeing in the interview that Trump had on the Timcast podcast that he even stated, I did not give Fauci the level of control and power when I was, in control, in the White House, and under my administration, Fauci didn't have the level of control and power he did as when Biden got into office, and he was given just this full reign. So very interesting. It does seem like there's a lot of people turning against Fauci now, making him the scapegoat of that medical experiment that was pushed onto mankind. And people are quick to forget that even loved ones were turning against each other. Even employers were turned into Gestapo agents and pushing Nuremberg Code level medical experimentation to those who were willing to bow the head and sign on the dotted line to give their genetics and children away from here to eternity, depending on how much the mRNA technology corrupts their genome. But people are quick to start pointing fingers at the guy who was on the TV telling them to believe and think a certain way, because they don't want to point at themselves and how they contributed to the herd mentality that convinced so many people to do something so detrimental to not only your health but your genetics, likely. So very sad indeed. Here's an interesting one. There has been some drama with that hit Christian adaptation of the life of Jesus. The Chosen severs ties with Angel Studios and claims a breach in contract. Very interesting. Of course, Angel Studios is the Mormon Christian / content producer that is trying to be a competitor to Hollywood studios. And The Chosen, a popular crowdfunded series about the life of Jesus Christ, is now ending its relationship with Angel Studios and accuses the distributor of breaching their contract. So very interesting. If you've paid attention to that show over the years, a lot of questions have been raised regarding Angel Studios and some of the theological positions that they hold and whatnot. And I know Dallas Jenkins claims that, they're not beholden to any particular denominational creed or whatnot. But, whenever you have these relationships break up, you can see, sometimes changes in the content. So I wonder, going forward, finally, they're starting to release the episodes of season 4. A lot of people have, been wary of the show, but I do believe it is one of the best produced kind of shows showing, the story of Christ. But it is very interesting whenever you talk about these depictions of biblical narratives, specifically to depictions of the Messiah, because even the people playing the acting, their whole life and their whole particular faith persuasion becomes the default that funnels people into the Christian faith of their particular persuasion, just because they're the ones that are on the screen, playing the beloved character. And so, something to be aware of. Here's a really beautiful quote here that I think is very, very, important because it's about the next generation. One thing that the LGBTQ crowd likely will not get to experience because, they, unless they're adopting children, which is definitely an agenda, they're not going to have children to invest in. But here's this beautiful quote. There is nothing more radical in the history of the human race than turning your children over to total strangers whom you know nothing about and have those strangers work on your child's mind out of your sight for 12 years. Man, how impactful. It talks about the schooling system and how we're relinquishing the most important thing, which is the next generation. And we're relinquishing their learning, their wisdom, their indoctrination is coming from these systems that are so full of just wickedness and political leaning and agendas, just like we're seeing this month. Man, how radical is that we are relinquishing the raising of our children to be turned into whatever the political machine wants them to be. It's very sobering to think about.
Yep.
And with that said, I wanted to show this interesting clip from Little Light Studios, which is the story of Narcissus and modern narcissism. Check this out.
Scientists now claim we have entered a narcissistic era. The idea of narcissism is not a recent phenomenon. The term narcissism originated more than 2,000 years ago when Ovid wrote The Legend of Narcissus. He tells the story of a beautiful Greek hunter who one day happens to see his reflection in a pool of water and falls in love with it. He becomes obsessed with its beauty and he's unable to leave his reflected image until he dies. After his death, a flower grew where he lay. Narcissism was popularized in our modern world by the psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud through his work on the ego and his relationship to the outside world. It seems each generation has had a struggle with the all-consuming self. A recent study by Now Sourcing and Frames Direct revealed that the average millennial will spend an hour a week on selfie duty, which can be anything from taking the photo to retaking it and editing it. Take, for example, these girls at a baseball game. The announcers take notice that every girl is fixated on the technology.
Selfie time. Bottom four at Chase Field. D-backs trail the Rockies 1-0. And while there, maybe they'll tweet us their fan photo, BB. Now's the time, fans. Get on the Twitter with a hashtag of the whole thing, AZDataStrongFan, and you might see your fan photo at a Diamondback TV broadcast brought to you by T-Mobile. I mean, look at the one on the right.
Do you have to make faces when you take selfies?
Wait, one more now.
Oh, there you go.
Better angle. Oh, check it. Did that come out okay?
That's the best one of the 300 pictures I've taken of myself today.
Every girl in the picture is locked into her phone.
Oh, Lord.
Every single one is dialed in. Welcome to parenting in 2015. They're all just completely transfixed by the technology. David Peralta. Oh, hold on. I'd take a selfie with the hot dog. Selfie with the churro. Selfie just of a selfie.
Honestly, why even pay for a ticket? What we post tells a lot about us. We have a digital reflection of who we are. Considering the average lifespan is 27,375 days, an average millennial is expected to take 25,700 selfies during their lifetime. That's close to one selfie daily. And that's a lot of pictures of ourselves. 55% of social media selfies come from millennials, but Gen X follows with 24% and baby boomers with 9%. And if you think about it, if you're 10 as of 2018, you've never known a world without iPhones. You know, making memories is great, but if you look back 20 years and most of the pictures are of yourself, is that gonna make you happy or for good memories? Yeah, the cameras are only a small part of the problem. Walking around these days, you would think smart devices are extensions of our hands. The truth is, we're not made to be self-absorbed. We're made to be relational creatures, serving others. Romans 14:7 tells us, "For none of us lives to himself, and no man dies to himself." This is really echoing the principles that Jesus taught when summarizing the whole law. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. And the second is like it, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is no other commandment greater than these. The principles God is promoting as ideals for humanity are love for man and love for God. What God is telling us is that relationships are central to our existence, and relationships are built on communication, time, and trust. When we don't put these things in their proper order as humans, we have a tendency to fill up life with other things. While many of these replacements seem to be harmless, they can often lead to addictions. If you can identify with wasting countless hours on social media and cannot imagine what life would be like without it, chances are you might be addicted.
The agenda of our culture today, modern narcissism, is absolutely plaguing the world because you see a lot of parallels, just even with what they were making fun of in that and sharing about that concept of the ancient story of Narcissus, the one who couldn't stop looking at themselves.
Yep.
In some other interesting economic news, the New York Stock Exchange had a glitch that plummeted the Warren Buffett Berkshire Hathaway stock 99%.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. So this glitch caused trading of shares of the Warren Buffett firm, and it was halted due to the glitch, and shares of other companies including Chipotle, Barrick Gold, Nescau, Nesquik Power were also paused due to the volatility. And so I thought it was very interesting, when you see glitches like this and their impact on the price of other stocks and how people start to freak out. Man, if economic collapse happens, that 99% drop is going to be across the board. And it's going to mean the end of the Federal Reserve economic petrodollar system. And so whenever you see glitches, it makes me wonder if the glitch itself is not slightly prophetic to what it'll look like when the collapse actually makes it a real plummet, right? Yep. And I thought it was funny because we're entering into Pride Month, and pride comes before the fall, that biblical statement. And so it's funny, the timing of the stock exchange plummet. We've talked about the Mandela Effect before, and there's now an official trailer for the Mandela Effect phenomenon and perceived reality. I think it'll be an interesting clip. Check this out.
Something inexplicable is happening where almost half the population say they remember things from the past being different or changed.
The Mandela Effect got its name because there was a very large segment of the population that believed that Nelson Mandela died decades earlier. Suddenly, his recent death was announced. Billions of people are interested in this topic, that memory isn't jiving up with reality.
Yes, it's like the Twilight Zone. Not everything is what you think it is.
In the car in which John F. Kennedy was assassinated, there were 6 passengers. I've watched the videos over and over. There is no way in my mind you could tell me there were 6 people in that car.
Things that people know so well just be twisted just enough to get people to question whether or not what they remembered was real.
There are many possibilities for the origins of the Mandela Effect. Some people think it's a simple case of mass misremembering, but the prevailing notion involves the idea that there are other universes existing right next to ours.
Fundamental reality as we know it can change. This lines up with sciences of today. CERN is a collider where they're smashing particles. Stephen Hawking, he warned people about CERN, very adamant that this was not something that we should be doing. We could be in a simulation. We don't know who is in charge. It could be aliens. It could be angels or demons, some people say. It could be just artificial intelligence.
The nightmare scenarios that could stem from that are just limitless.
Now, a growing number of people want to know if history is being edited.
Oh, man. Mandela Effect, is it real? Is it not? Who can know? But with that said, I wanted to share a card from the Illuminati playing deck, and it's titled Rewriting History. And it says this: any one alignment of any destroyed group may retroactively added, removed, or reversed. This affects any goal which involves destroying a certain number of groups of some alignment. Play this card at any time. It requires an action by your Illuminati or actions by the media group with a total power of at least 8. So it's just like, while, it's a give or take whether the Mandela Effect is just a social illusion created by media that is produced off of other media, and then that media represents it wrong, and then the group think remembers it wrong, or if it's a real thing. It is interesting that they have it included in the Illuminati playing card deck.
Yep.
All right, here's a plane-related incident where a plane evacuated by Specialist Infectious Diseases team, due to reports of passengers and cases of suspected infectious diseases today. So you always have zombie movies start off this way, right?
Yep.
Oh man, but we already know that the medical infectious diseases narrative is used to manipulate and control, because everybody is willing to bow to the men in the white lab coat, as we saw back in 2020-21 with Anthony Fauci and all the medical pushing that happened then. And so you can see that it's a recurring pattern in the future of plagues being used to scare the crap out of mankind and force us into that cattle herding pen to the slaughter, so to speak. And it reminds me of what we read in that COVID-19 The Great Reset book, falsely attributed to Carl Schwab, apparently, but it's no surprise if they think of it that way. But it mentioned how plagues are going to be used to depopulate the earth. And so while, yes, it might be a fear-mongering technique, we have to be aware that biblically it's prophesied in the book of Revelation and in many places that judgment comes threefold. It's war, famine, and pestilence. And that's what gets you. That's what depopulates the earth according to the scripture. And it comes in recurring patterns. And so, it's just, it's really interesting to see these things. And, I just want to bring up that topic of the recurring pattern biblically, because you see them kind of becoming wise to it. And they're like, well, if this recurring pattern of war, famine, and plague equals people dead, then maybe we can ride that high horse all the way to the top of the pyramid. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So here's an interesting video of some dual tornadoes terrorizing a Midland airport as travelers flee for their lives. I know we've had some crazy tornadoes and weather over the past few weeks, so I wanted to share this video.
As the dual tornadoes approached the airport, the sense of urgency reached a fever pitch. Travelers were quickly ushered into the basement, seeking shelter from the impending danger. The atmosphere was electric with fear and anticipation, as all eyes remained transfixed on the unfolding spectacle outside. Take a look.
That one looks like no, they're going to be on the left. So as soon as you get out there, we're going to get a pulse, and then we're going to reverse.
Stay in the hallway. We'll get a little crowded. Just find the hallway. We can't go anywhere for right now.
And to speak of crazy weather patterns, here's a video from Jason A. and some unexplained events worldwide. Very interesting. Check this out.
You blink and you miss this one. TMZ captured the video. It lasts a nanosecond. An unidentified object whizzing across a clear blue sky. You slow this thing down, looks pretty legit. A Blue Angels demonstration was going on in Long Island. The object in question moves so fast, a lot faster than the plane, by the way. This is the second alleged UFO sighting in New York in recent months.
What did you do with the video, and did you reach out to authorities to share it with them?
Thank you for having me. And when I realized that I had something like this on the video, the first thing I did was I emailed the FAA to let them know what I saw, and maybe it was a safety hazard. I reached out to them. Unfortunately, I haven't heard back from them. They didn't acknowledge my email.
When you say who they are or where they're from, and you're saying they're being operated, do they look like they're under intelligent control?
Absolutely, they are. And we know now from the amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act last year that Senate Majority Leader Schumer introduced, called the Schumer Amendment, about disclosing UAP information. We know now from that draft legislation that there are non-human intelligences visiting us in all domains, the sea, the sky, and we see reports over land. And they're using what they called in this amendment, technology of unknown origin. So this is a national or global security concern. And the reason I wrote about the aspect in the oceans is that's my background. I'm an expert in it. And we'll never have a complete understanding of these phenomena unless we look at the ocean too.
You also wrote that we know more about Mars, the surface of the moon, than we do about our own ocean. You have a science background. I got to ask, what do you think it is?
Well, there's a number of possibilities. I don't know, and most of the intelligence community does not know. But it could either be from elsewhere in the universe. Some people speculate it could be from another dimension, but I don't think we have the mathematics to just explain that, or the physics just yet, or even possibly within the planet somewhere. None of this is known.
All righty. The world is a strange place, guys. Very strange indeed. So now on to the topic of AI. Now, we talk about it numerous times in the past, but here's some articles that caught my attention. CEOs could easily be replaced with AI, experts argue. It's come full circle, boys. Watch out. Now they're coming for the top of the pyramid as well as the worker class. Many companies are fine with not having one, in reference to a CEO, right? So CEOs better start endearing themselves to their employees real quick, because, oh boy, the case for replacing them with AI just keeps mounting. Some people like the social aspects of having a human boss. But after COVID, many are also fine with not having one. The idea of subbing bosses for bots is the flip side to all those fears about AI causing widespread job destruction, which often focuses on the fact, quite justifiably, that it'll be regular grunts being shown the door in favor of intelligent automation. But since C-suite execs tend to command high salaries, there's ample financial incentive to replace them too. So I think what's significant about this is if they do implement the AI boss, then that AI boss is going to be so much more up people's butts and firing people for inadequacy and stuff, that the standard of the workplace is going to be raised, which could, one, be a good thing, but also, you know, people that have been able to float the boat, so to speak, are probably going to be shown the door based on, you know, if your boss is a hyper-intelligent AI super intelligence, you know, it's going to know when you're dropping the ball, right?
Yep.
And I think that terrifies people, for one, but also I think the environment of the workplace that creates separating the man with the whip, so to speak, from the workhorse, and removing that interpersonal relationship and the communication aspect of sympathizing with the human nature and being able to be like, look, you know, I think it creates a toxic work environment in the aspect of, you know, your AI boss doesn't care if you've had one too many sick days. Your AI boss is not going to care that you have a wife and a newborn child. Your AI boss isn't going to care this, that, you know, and I think that it's designed to start to transform the minds of those who remain in the workforce and are not weeded out to just be these basic human diodes on a giant computer.
It's like
right?
dehumanizing.
Yes. I mean, here's another thing regarding AI. Microsoft AI screenshots everything you do on your computer, and privacy experts are concerned. Maybe Microsoft Recall should get a recall. The computer giant's new AI program is causing worry among cyber experts as it takes screenshots of a user's activity every 5 seconds. Whoa. This could be a privacy nightmare, Dr. Chris Shearshak, an AI and privacy advisor, warned British Broadcasting Company. The mere fact that screenshots will be taken during use of the device could have a chilling effect on people, especially those with bad habits, right?
Yep.
But other than that, you know, it's crazy the monitoring capability that constant screenshots will have. Recall is part of the brand's new, larger AI Copilot interface. Microsoft boasts that it can help users retrace their steps in a technically informal manner. So the program can read key terms and words in screen captures, and when user input photos, phrases, or links to search within their history, Recall can then scan and match those with relevant screenshots. Man, I know they're trying to make a use case that it's going to help you find that long-lost Korean restaurant your friend long ago, right? But just think about how we already understand the Edward realm of government surveillance as he exposed. And once, I mean, they likely already are doing this, and we're just not aware of it. But, I mean, every single thing you do online can be monitored, tracked, and crunched in terms of them identifying if you're looking at dangerous articles or harmful malinformation. And man, when that information can be churned through by a hyper super AI intelligence, then it really does lay the groundwork for a social credit score system regarding your browsing habits. It lays work for just some bad stuff. And while they're making the use case for it, man, the disastrous consequences of it being used for the wrong purposes is immense.
Yeah, I mean, like, I get the security cameras. Security cameras record every 5 seconds sometimes if they're, like, you know, recording. But for them to take photos of your screen, that's very intrusive. That's not protecting you. That's protecting something else, in my opinion. It's protecting them. It's whatever they want to do with our information, what we search. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Well, it's just a time to be aware that, just like Bear Independent said, whenever you flee into the wilderness, don't bring this with you.
Yep.
Oh, man. Here's a really interesting story coming out of Cincinnati. No tiger found on the loose in Cincinnati after a possible sighting reported, police say. So apparently people are seeing or reporting that they've seen a tiger on the loose near Cincinnati. The police searched early Monday for a tiger, receiving reports from 2 people that one was possibly sighted near the Cincinnati Zoo. So it just makes me think, like, one day you could be walking around one of these big cities and just get mauled by a tiger and just be like, what's happening? What's happening? You know, it's just like a tiger kills you. It's like, oh, man. Yeah, man.
That's crazy.
Watch out. You know, watch out if you live near a big zoo. You never know what could get loose.
Well, apparently somebody's personal tiger escaped in Houston. This was somewhat recently that I saw on a YouTube video, and they finally caught it after like a week. So it was walking around the city for a week, and then they found it. And the owner was able to like hug it, and like I was like, that's too much for me. Like they wouldn't shoot it, which is good, I guess. As long as they're gonna find like, you know, a bunch of dead pets where it was nesting. Then they're gonna want to shoot it.
Yeah, man. That reminds me, you guys can own pretty much anything down there in Texas. Land of the free, home of the brave.
Yeah, I want a little capuchin monkey, but I don't think it's gonna happen.
All right, here's another interesting article. Scientists connect 16 mini brains made of human tissue to create a living computer. It's like a 21st century version of a Frankenstein monster. So here's an interesting clip of it. But apparently this Switzerland-based startup, Final Spark, claims to have built a unique computer processor made from 16 mini brains made from human brain tissue. And they are positioning this living computer as an alternative to silicon-based computing. And now other researchers can remotely access the startup's biocomputer, the Neuro platform, to conduct studies on, say, artificial intelligence, which typically requires enormous resources. One of the biggest advantages of biological computing is that neurons compute information with much less energy than digital computers. Final Spark scientist and strategic advisor Yelena Curtis wrote in a company blog post earlier this month. It is estimated that living neurons can use over 1 million times less energy than current digital processors we use. Wow. And so that's interesting in relation to this next article, which Mastercard launches tech that lets you pay with your face or hand in stores. Okay, very interesting. Some biological economics there. And what does this remind us of? Let me just take a little gander over here at Revelation 13, right? And this is talking about the beast coming up out of the earth with two horns like a lamb, and he spake like a dragon. And I think the interesting parallel here is that the two horns like a lamb kind of signify somebody coming onto the world scene as in a innocent angel of light type figure. But the words that he speak is like the dragon, right? Like the, Satan, right? He exercises all the power of the first beast before him, causes the earth and them that which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he does great wonders so that he makes fire come down from heaven and earth in the sight of men. Do you guys remember some of the articles we covered regarding the directed energy weapons from satellites or whatever? Beams coming out of the sky, burning houses down and, melting cars. Fire from heaven, right? Well, it says he deceives them that dwell in the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell in the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had a wound by a sword and did live. And he had power to give life to the image of the beast, and that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. And here's where it is. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark on their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. And then when we look at stuff like this, like, oh, you can pay with your face, mark on the forehead, or hand, mark on the right hand, in stores. Ding, ding, ding. It's like, oh, it can't get more obvious to where these things are headed, including AI and just the interaction with AI and economics and the collapse of the modern system entering into the crypto digital age. Oh, man.
Star Trek fans can remember Daystrom and his Ingrams on a supercomputer.
You'll have to do a Star Trek expose breakdown for us sometime, Opa. I think there's a lot. I know Rob loved Star Wars and Star Trek, and I think there's some really interesting things that they included in some of these old sci-fi television shows that reveal kind of what they want to implement in the future. So very interesting. Since we just a few weeks ago featured our interview with Eddie Bravo, I wanted to show this. There was a recent debate on MadMaxWorld.tv, which was the conversation between Eddie Bravo, Alex Jones, and Dave Weiss regarding an interesting topic, right? Well, this just came out as recent as May 31st, 2024. It was featured on the Alex Jones show. You know, he's been this pioneer of truther alternative news media. And so it's very cool to see somebody that we've interacted with, Eddie Bravo, and somebody I've interacted with in the past, you know, meeting them at conferences and stuff, David Weiss, you know, going on. So very, very interesting.
I mean,
But
how cool is
wanted
it
to-
that we can say that we are friends with Eddie Bravo? How many people can say that? I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool to be
That
able
we
to
text with
have
them. I
that
mean, that's-
relationship.
You know? It's cool.
You know that YouTube puts labels on all truth videos, right?
Yeah, they do.
They'll put truth on every flat earth video. Why would they do that? Why would they put any flat earth? And then if you punch in, there's a video called The History of Flat Earth by Eric Dubé. If you punch that in on YouTube right now, it won't take you to that. It'll take you to 100 videos that they produce to turn you away, turn you off from flat earth. You could punch it in word for word. The History of Flat Earth by Eric Dubé. It won't come up. They'll give you 100 videos of videos.
I tried to, let me tell you something. I tried to search.
Why would they do that?
I tried to search Trump Russia to see what they were going to say today on Google, and it wouldn't let me search it.
That's what I'm saying. Why would they do that?
Alex,
why would they do that?
If I looked up for like underwater basket weaving a year ago, I could go to my history and find it. If you watch a whole bunch of flat earth videos, like some of my videos and other good videos, then you go to your history, it's not there, and it's replaced with propaganda.
Doesn't that make you a little suspicious?
It's
based on all the shit you went through. You went through all the shit. You should be questioning in everything. You should throw everything out.
We have a delay. We're on 300 radio stations. You got to only cuss occasionally.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Isn't it weird that no one has circumnavigated south? Isn't it weird that they faked the 24-hour sun in Antarctica? Isn't it weird that there's there's webcams in Antarctica where that you can watch the shadows go around, it's going, and then all of a sudden, it skips 8 hours. Every day it skips 8 hours in their summer when there should be a 24-hour sun.
Well, guys, leave a comment below if you have any insight on the news we covered today. Leave a comment if you enjoyed some of those clips we shared. And if you have any news that you think our audience should be aware of that we've not covered this week, please leave it in the comments below. And with that said, Jeremiah, that's all the news for this week.
All right, thank you, Jake, for another great current news as always. Now I want to share with you guys our new and improved bookstore of Babylon Rising books. So check this out.
Check out our new and improved BabylonRisingBooks.com, where you can get Rob Skiba's books, bundles, DVDs, DVD-ROMs, videos, and so much more. You can even get Sheila and Jeremiah's books, so check it out now.
So we got brand new bundles. You know, we got a whole bunch of new stuff, and every single purchase made gets a signed copy of my book for free. So there's that if you want that. So now I think it's about that time for an all-new Opa's Corner. Take it away, Opa.
Mein Hut, der hat 3 Ecken. 3 Ecken hat mein Hut. Und hat nicht 3 Ecken, dann ist es nicht mein Hut.
The strange, the bizarre, the unexpected. These are the kinds of subjects a man named Robert L. Ripley challenged us to believe it or not.
Believe it or not, you.
Wally, believe it or not.
Believe it or not.
Believe it!
You're a loony.
In 1990, Malaysian strongman Rasami Lechamana used his hair to pull a Boeing 737 aircraft in Kuala Lumpur 56 feet, setting a new world record. His abilities were passed on to his daughter, who pulled a truck with her hair in 2002. What a hair-raising feat. Hope they didn't go bald. Believe it or not. The record for the longest wedding veil goes to a bride in Cyprus. Her veil measured a staggering 22,843 feet long, which is equivalent to over 6 football fields. It took a team of people to carry and manage the enormous veil during the ceremony. Believe it or not. The first person charged with speeding in a vehicle was going 8 miles per hour. Believe it or not. Otto the Bulldog broke the record for a dog to skate through the longest human tunnel when he skated through the legs of 30 people without any assistance. Otto, you're our hero! Believe it or not. In some Harry Potter movie scenes where Harry, Ron, and Hermione are doing their Hogwarts schoolwork, the actors were actually doing their real schoolwork. Believe it or not. The heaviest onion on record was grown by Pete Glazebrook of England. It weighed 17 pounds.
Wow.
Believe it or not. Lettuce is a member of the sunflower family. Is your mind blown? Believe it or not. Here's one to tickle your funny bone. The human hand has 54 bones. That's more than a quarter of the bones in the whole body. Wow. Believe it or not. An ostrich's eye is actually bigger than its brain. Ostriches also have the largest eye of any land animal.
Believe that.
Believe it or not. To make 1 pound of honey, a bee has to fly 90,000 miles. Though one bee typically only makes 1/12 of a teaspoon of the stuff in its lifetime. Believe it or not. There are over 700 ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic symbols. That's a lot compared to 26 letters of the alphabet. Believe it or not. Here's a fact to sit on. There are over 9,000 benches in New York's Central Park. Believe it or not. Despite taking about 3 hours to play out, the average baseball game only has about 18 minutes of active playing time. Believe it or not. In 2016, Mozart sold more albums than Beyonce. Believe it or not. Pope Gregory IV once declared war on cats because he believed Satan used black cats. His declaration led to the mass extermination of cats.
How dare he?
Believe it or not. How do you keep an idiot in suspense? Exaggerations went up by 1,000,000% last year. They all laughed when I said I wanted to be a comedian. Well, they're not laughing now. This guy said to me, "I'm going to attack you with the neck of a guitar." I said, "Is that a threat?" My wife. It's difficult to say what she does. She sells seashells on the seashore. A cement mixer collided with a prison van. Motorists are asked to be on the lookout for 16 hardened criminals. My grandfather invented the cold air balloon. Never really took off. So what if I don't know what Armageddon means? It's not the end of the world. Adam and Eve were the first ones to ignore the Apple terms and conditions. I used to be a baker, but I couldn't make enough dough. I told a chemistry joke, but there was no reaction. I'm trying to organize a hide-and-seek tournament, but good players are hard to find. I threw a boomerang a few years ago. Now I live in constant fear. Parallel lines have so much in common, it's a shame they'll never meet. I used to play the piano by ear, but now I use my hands. Good evening, and welcome to OPA'S Corner Weekly Fake News. In a surprising turn of events, a local man has become an instant millionaire after investing in pet rock NFTs. Kyle Stone, 32, bought several digital pet rocks as a joke, only to find their value skyrocketing as collectors sought the next big thing in digital ownership. Kyle commented, "I never thought my childhood nostalgia would pay off like this." Financial advisors are now recommending diversifying portfolios to include nostalgic novelty items. In a surprising show of global unity, world leaders have agreed to resolve international disputes using the game of rock, paper, scissors. The agreement, dubbed the Global Peace and Play Pact, was signed at a summit in Geneva where leaders from 195 countries pledged to settle conflicts in a best-of-3 format. UN Secretary General commented, "It's simple, effective, and much cheaper than military interventions." Critics are skeptical, but proponents argue it's worth a shot for world peace. In a classic display of irony, global leaders attended a climate summit on reducing emissions by taking private jets to the event. The summit, held in a remote luxury resort, aimed to tackle pressing environmental issues. Critics quickly pointed out the hypocrisy, but attendees insisted that some sacrifices must be made for the greater good. Nothing says we care about the planet like a carbon footprint the size of a small country. In a shocking discovery, NASA scientists have found that the Mars rover Curiosity has been using its downtime to shop on Amazon. Logs revealed that the rover has been ordering various Earth-based items from gourmet snacks to a robotic vacuum. NASA spokesperson Dr. Jane Starfield commented, "We always knew Curiosity was advanced, but this is beyond our expectations." The revelation has sparked debate over the need for better cybersecurity measures for space exploration equipment. Amazon has yet to comment on whether it will deliver to Mars. A new study has linked the rise in global temperatures to the unprecedented levels of hot air admitted by politicians worldwide. The International Climate Commission reported that speeches, debates, and campaign promises have contributed significantly to global warming. A climate scientist joked, "If they could just stop talking for a minute, we might actually cool the planet." Activists are now calling for a day of silence to give Earth a break. Maybe we should just send politicians to Mars with the billionaires. 2 birds, 1 spaceship. And that's the way it wasn't. Thank you for watching OPA'S Corner Weekly Fake News. Limericks. There once was a human named Joel who thought he was in control. He soon learned he's not, 'cause I call the shots. Now put some darn food in my bowl. Thank you. Automatic feeders. Mutflix, movies and TV and documentaries. Recently watched Barking Bad, When Harry Sniffed Sally, Fur and Loathing in Las Vegas. Scared Cow. No, no, I said carve a sacred cow. Hey, what do you want me to do with the extraterrestrials? Sliced Starwurst, chewy sausage candy. Ew. Try the worst. Originally made from, you do not want to know. I was going to do some chores, but now I don't want to do anything. I still got it.
That's true.
Okay, Bill. Tuesday night, 8 o'clock over at the sheriff's office where they're holding your brother's killer. You want that with extra hollering? Miller's Angry Mobs. Bag of air with chips. Finally, some truth in advertising. Jury of English majors. I didn't do nothing. Ooh, a confession. Money holders. You have to put money in the card yourself, sir. Opinion poll. Certainly I support Congress taking steps to economize, as long as the cost isn't prohibitive. Sandman? No, I sold out to Big Pharma years ago. Care for an Ambien? Haiku. Sunbeam is moving, as am I, ever slowly. Must lick but in warmth. Thank you. Hear that? Darn! He called it a darn! All this political correctness has gone too far. Possum accidents. All right, who's really hurt and who's playing? Acting lessons. Sunday school was great. We learned the gossip according to St. John. My son, you can't blame God for all your problems, but I'd say you definitely got a beef with your cartoonist. If you're going to scream every time a kid yells, "Cannonball," you're not coming with me anymore. Snap and crunch. Oh, make your breakfast a living shell. Chomp. Mmm, delicious. Please send my compliments to the chef. I should have let Chef Boyardee post haste. Ether Island. Why would you want to eat a sloth? I'm tired of fast foods. Herman catches a lucky break. The doctor says he's going to have to give you a few more tests. Science, math. Before their admission to any canine university, dogs must first do well on the cats. A Siamese traveling at 3 feet per second tries to climb a 20-foot tree while being chased by a Rottweiler who's running at the same rate. How fast must the Rottweiler... Someone was following him. Was it, what's his name? Or could it be that other guy? He glanced back. It was neither. It was whoever that guy is who's the husband of what's-her-name. Hey, I still haven't come up with some good names yet, okay? Snake inventors. Put her there, Rob. Warren Hagstrom, professional Western movie background straight crosser. Warren. I'm guessing that's the carpool lane. And that concludes another OPA'S Corner.
Mein Hut, der hat 3 Ecken. 3 Ecken hat mein Hut. Und hat nicht 3 Ecken, dann ist es nicht mein Hut.
OPA'S Corner is now available on my own YouTube channel. Like, share, and subscribe.
Beautiful, handcrafted Tzits by Ciara Grant. What is the OG WWJD? It's wearing fringes on your garments. In accordance to Numbers chapter 15, verse 38 through 40. Speak unto the children of Israel, and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put a cord of blue in it.
Are you tired of living in constant pain? Do you feel like you've tried every CBD product on the market with no relief? Look no further than JJ's Natural CBD Rub. When I was diagnosed with degenerative disc disease, this was the only product that completely took my pain away. Working with JJ has been a dream come true, and his products have completely changed my life. Don't just take my word for it. Visit JJ's website, jjcbdrub.com, and read hundreds of testimonials from people whose lives have been changed by all of JJ's amazing products. And now, as a Skiba News Nation exclusive, you can get $50 off a 3-pack special of JJ's Natural CBD Rub by texting CBD to 920-382-7720. Don't suffer in silence any longer. Take control of your pain today with JJ's Natural CBD Rub. Again, text CBD to 920-382-7720 for an exclusive discount and start feeling the relief you deserve. The links are in the description below. Thank you, JJ. Now I got a great History's Mysteries for you guys today, so let's play that intro. God, I love that beat. Anyways, so today for History's Mysteries, we're going to be talking about the man Boeing fears most. And I know Opa, he loves air disasters, and so this has a lot to do with that, but it's all about the suspicious death or the sewer slide of one man. And so let's just dive deep into how Boeing got away with it, allegedly. So let's play that first clip.
A massive jolt happened, and I was awakened, and I looked up on the roof of the plane, and then he came crashing down to the floor.
more than 170 Boeing 737 MAX 9 passenger aircraft after a window and section of a fuselage blew out in midair during a flight.
Of an engine cover that fell off a Boeing 737 operated by Southwest Airlines during takeoff in Denver last night.
A new investigation into the company amid allegations about one of Boeing's airplanes. It's investigating new whistleblower claims made by a Boeing quality engineer about the 787 Dreamliner. The latest claims, first reported by the New York Times, come after a series of dangerous mishaps involving other Boeing planes in recent months.
Just days after testifying against the company, whistleblower John Barnett was found dead in South Carolina.
Wasn't concerned about safety because I asked him, I said, aren't you scared? And he said, in his voice and the way he would talk, no, I ain't scared. He said, but if anything happens to me, it's not suicide.
Just a few months ago, John Barnett held the fate of Boeing in the palm of his hand. After he testified against Boeing after a series of terrifying malfunctions, Boeing shares were tanking. The FAA granted dozens of Boeing planes. More Boeing employees were coming forward with information on how dangerous the planes really were. Boeing was on the verge of losing it all, which made John Barnett their #1 enemy. And on top of all this, John Barnett was also in the middle of suing Boeing because they had retaliated against him. And just as John Barnett was about to give his final deposition on video, John Barnett was conveniently found dead. He had unalived himself. And on the surface, his death made sense. He was old, depressed, he was facing a losing battle against one of the biggest airplane manufacturers in the world. Of course he unalived himself. But when you look behind the curtain, many of the details of his death looks a little suspicious. Like, was it a coincidence that according to his lawyers, John Barnett seemed to be in good spirits the entire week he was testifying against Boeing? Was it a coincidence that the night before his death, he was spotted by a hotel employee eating and scrolling on his phone, and according to that employee, quote, he didn't seem upset at all? Or was it a coincidence that Barnett was supposed to drive home the evening on Friday, March 8th, but Boeing's lawyers insisted that he stay and continue his testimony the next day, only for him to end up dead? Or was it a coincidence that there was a piece of paper, possibly a note, that was found next to him in the car that the police still refused to reveal what the note said? Or how no one has released the security camera footage from the hotel where he was staying at? Or was it a coincidence that just a few months before he wound up dead, Barnett literally told a family friend, quote,
"If anything happens to me, it's not
Are we supposed to believe that this was nothing more than a sad twist of fate that just so happens to save one of the most powerful military-industrial complex companies on the planet from absolute ruin? And why, after the police ruled his death self-inflicted, is Barnett's lawyer still calling for a full investigation into the circumstances surrounding his death? Is there more to the story that Boeing does not want you to know?
Well, the answer to that question is absolutely. Now, when there are so many coincidences, that's when we have to look into things, because that's where the truth is. I mean, there can only be so many, coincidences before people are like, wait, that's very, very Clinton-like, like very, I'm about to testify and I'm not suicidal. And yeah, so now we're going to be learning about the bombshell revelations from John Barnett, the man Boeing feared most. So check this out.
One of the reasons why Boeing has been so careless is because they know that their customers have no one else to go to. See, Boeing's main competitor Airbus is already booked out for the next 10 years worth of orders. So if you need an airplane, you gotta put up with Boeing. On January 5th, 2024, an Alaska Airlines flight carrying 177 people took off from Portland, Oregon. Just minutes into the flights, passengers heard a loud bang and felt a rush of cold air as the cabin depressurized. One of the plane's emergency door plugs had blown off, leaving a massive hole in the cabin. Luckily, no one was seriously injured, and at the time most people assumed it was a freak accident, a 1 in a million fault that no one could have foreseen or prevented. But it turns out they were wrong, very wrong. The real reason the door flew off was because that specific door panel on the Boeing plane was installed without any bolts to hold it down. Yes, you heard that right. Under slightly different circumstances, 177 people could have died because some genius forgot to put bolts on an airplane door. How does something like this even happen? How does a company as big as Boeing set out a plane without checking if all the parts were installed correctly? Apparently very easily, at least according to John Barnett. See, back in the mid-1980s, John Barnett joined Boeing as a quality control manager at the company's factory in Everett, Washington. It was his job to carefully inspect all the work being done by Boeing engineers and comb through every inch of every Boeing plane leaving the factory to make sure everything was up to code. For 25 years, Barnett worked at Boeing's Everett factory without any complaints. If he found problems in the planes he inspected, he would notify his superiors, and they would fix the problems before the planes were sent out. Barnett loved his job. He was proud to work for a company as honest and upfront as Boeing, and he did his job extremely well. In fact, he did so well that in 2010, he was recruited to start working at a different Boeing factory in Charleston, South Carolina. The factory in Charleston was focused on building Boeing's new 787 Dreamliner. And after 25 years of doing the same job, Barnett was excited to move to a new city and work on new planes. But little did he know that he was about to step into a nightmare. In an interview in 2019, Barnett said, quote,
"The new leadership didn't understand processes. They were from the military side. My impression was their mindset was, we are going to do it the way we want to do it. Their motto at the time was, we are in Charleston and we can do anything we want."
And that's where the real problem started. Barnett's new bosses at the Charleston factory weren't interested in maintaining Boeing's reputation or the safety of its planes. All they wanted to do was send out as many planes as fast as they possibly could, and that meant cutting corners. Quote,
"They started pressuring us to not document defects, to work outside the procedures, to allow defective material to be installed without being corrected. They just wanted to get the planes pushed out the door and make the cash register ring. As time went on over the next several years, they started ignoring safety issues and the defective parts. They wanted to just close those jobs out and not research them, that type of thing. Over the years, it just got worse and worse."
At first, it started with telling quality managers like Barnett not to report faults or defects in writing. "We're all on the same team here. Why make our factory look bad by reporting mistakes in writing? Just tell us what the issues are and we'll make sure they're fixed before the planes go out." That kind of thing. Except none of Barnett's superiors had any interest in actually fixing the mistakes the quality managers reported. And these weren't just minor issues. They were major safety risks that were being straight up ignored by management. First, Barnett and his team discovered shards of razor-sharp titanium under several of the airplane's floorboards. These pieces of titanium were left behind by the guys putting the planes together. And under any other circumstances, this wouldn't be that big of a deal. But in Boeing planes, most of the flight's control wires also run underneath the floorboards. Imagine what would happen if a little turbulence caused one of those titanium shards to cut the wrong wire. The plane would become uncontrollable. Barnett was sure his superiors would be just as shocked as he was, and that they would fix it immediately, except they didn't. Ripping up the floorboards and all the 787 Dreamliners in the factory would take too much time and cost too much money. They didn't care about stupid things like flight safety. All they cared about was making the cash register ring, remember? So they left Barnett with no other choice but to file an official complaint with the FAA. Quote,
"The FAA came in and did a spot audit. They audited 5 airplanes in Everett and 5 airplanes in Charleston, and they found the metal slivers in all 10 airplanes they inspected."
This should have been enough to get the entire Charleston management team fired. Imagine risking hundreds of lives, all because you didn't want to waste time cleaning up metal shards. But to Barnett's surprise, nothing happened. No one was held responsible. No one was punished or fired. Instead, he was the one being treated like a snitch for making a formal complaints. But Barnett didn't care. He wasn't about to let some military industrial higher-ups stop him from doing his job. Instead, he became even more careful and thorough while inspecting planes. And more defects just kept popping up all over the place. Almost immediately after submitting the complaints, Barnett and his team came across another issue. In almost every 787 Dreamliner they inspected, at least 25% of the oxygen mask did not work properly. Remember that Alaska Airlines flight where the door flew off? Well, when the entire cabin depressurized, the only thing keeping all those people on board alive were the oxygen masks. Now imagine what would happen if a quarter of those masks did not work. And sure, that Alaska plane was a Boeing 737, and that oxygen mask problem was found in the 787 Dreamliner, but if one Boeing factory could let this stuff slide, who's to say that others wouldn't do it too? A Boeing 737 MAX 9, like the Alaska Airlines flight, can carry a max of 220 passengers and crew. If a flight like that was fully booked and ran into problems in the air, up to 55 people could end up with oxygen masks that aren't working. That means 55 people would die from completely preventable deaths, all because Boeing wanted to save a few $100s. And just like before, Barnett immediately informed his superiors of the issues, only for them to do absolutely nothing about it. And then came the final straw. Barnett and his team discovered something even worse than the titanium shards and broken oxygen masks. See, whenever a quality manager found a defective part in one of the Boeing planes, they would instruct the engineers to remove that part and replace it with a working one. The defective part would then be repaired or disposed of, depending on what was wrong with it. But that was not what was happening at the Charleston factory. Instead, engineers would remove these parts and then would magically lose track of what would happen to them next. And then, those same faulty parts would then be magically reinstalled into the same planes without being repaired. That's how lazy and cheap Boeing had become. And to give you an idea of how serious this was, it wasn't just one seatbelt here or a tray table there, it was dozens of parts that were critical to the plane's body. Parts that would mean the difference between a smooth flight and a crash landing. These defective parts would just be taken off and then just reinstalled onto the same plane again or on a different plane without being repaired. And since no one kept track of these missing parts, if the quality manager for that specific plane didn't notice, the plane would just be sent out to Delta, Emirates, or any other airline as if it was 100% safe and functional. Barnett couldn't believe that a company as big as Boeing could let these kinds of grave mistakes slide, but they did. Every time he filed an internal complaint, he would be ignored. And the more he tried to get people to take him seriously, the more his bosses punished him for doing his job right.
So he worked there for 25 years, and Boeing cared more about money than anything. They cared more about it than people's safety, and Barnett seemed to have a problem with it. So For this next clip, we're going to be talking about how this man was punished for doing his job well. So let's play that clip.
Barnett was on thin ice. It was obvious that the only thing his bosses cared about was selling more planes, and that he was the one thing that was standing in their way. But the problem was they couldn't just fire him for doing his job. That would get them sued. So they had to get creative with their punishments. Quote,
after I filed my complaint, they isolated me from the other quality managers. I was basically by myself. I was in a hostile work environment. Nothing I could do was right. Anytime I brought up procedures, I was told to work in the gray areas of the procedures and find a way to keep production moving.
But Barnett was not going to take this lying down. He eventually sent a complaint to Boeing's ethics departments. This was as high as he could go. Quote,
they sent me an email and said they had substantiated my original complaint and that they had opened a second investigation against my boss for the hostile work environment. They started a second investigation. That went away. I never got a follow-up. They took no action to correct anything. It just went into a black hole somewhere.
Still, Barnett would not give up. He kept trying to keep defective parts from being installed any way he could, including keeping careful records of every fault he found and every complaint he had. But that just made things worse. His bosses in Charleston were getting angry, so they gave him one last chance to make things right. From now on, if he had any complaints, they told him he had to come to them in person and tell them about it himself. Under no circumstances should he put any of his complaints in writing. That would just make the company look bad if something went wrong with the parts he was flagging. It was too much for Barnett. He couldn't take the isolation and constant punishment anymore, so he did the only thing he had left. He went straight to the boss of the Boeing Ethics Committee. Quote,
I sent her an email and said, I need help. I'm being harassed and blacklisted. And she wrote back and said, we will look into your complaint. In that email, I specifically asked that my complaints be investigated by people outside of Charleston. The people in Charleston all seem to be working together and sharing information and covering things up. They assured me it would. Within a couple of days, it was turned over to the human resources rep that should have been under investigation, and they gave it to her to investigate. Not surprisingly, she closed it out very quickly, saying she couldn't substantiate my complaint.
All the cards were stacked against Barnett's. It was obvious he was fighting a losing battle against his supervisors. But how was any of this even possible? Why, after 25 years of happily working for Boeing in Washington, was Barnett being treated like garbage for doing the exact same job in Charleston? Did the Charleston management team just hate his guts, or was there something bigger going on?
It's still said that they didn't care about his complaints about keeping people safe. I mean, that was literally his job. And so now for this next clip, we're going to be talking about the war profiteering, or the war profiteers, I should say. Anyways, check this out.
Even though Boeing is best known for its commercial airplanes, that's not where most of the company's money comes from. You see, Boeing is also the third biggest defense contractor in the world, and one of Boeing's biggest sources of revenue is defense contracting. It produces all sorts of rockets, satellites, and weapons for the US military. Back in the late 1990s, Boeing merged with the McDonnell Douglas Corporation. Even though you may not have heard of McDonnell Douglas before, they were one of the biggest military industrial companies in the world. They produced things like the F-15 Eagle fighter jet, the F-A-18 Hornet, they were manufacturing the Tomahawk missile, and now they had just merged with Boeing. Even though McDonnell Douglas lost his name in the merger, it didn't lose its power. Instead, members of McDonnell's cutthroat management team actually pushed Boeing's more level-headed managers out. Unlike Boeing's original managers, the guys from McDonnell Douglas didn't care about the quality of their engineering or maintaining the company's reputation. All they cared about was their stock price, and the easiest way to increase the stock price? Cut costs. They were also super tight with their US military partners, and they used that influence to push their profit-first management style onto everyone else. That included outsourcing a lot of the manufacturing work to other companies, like Spirit AeroSystems, which is where the body of that Alaska Airlines plane was built. And guess what? Just like Boeing, whistleblowers have accused Spirit AeroSystems of covering up faults and defects and retaliating against inspectors who reported them. The results? Boeing went from a company that valued quality and safety above all else to a profit-at-all-cost monster. At the Washington plant where John Barnett worked for 25 years, squeezing every penny out was not the biggest concern. But in Charleston, it was the complete opposite. The management team at Charleston was sourced directly from McDonnell Douglas' old hometown of St. Louis, Missouri. And the plant's main factory is literally built on the same grounds as a joint-use Charleston Air Force Base. And needless to say, Barnett did not fit in. so his bosses made sure he paid for it. John's direct supervisor, quote, mocked him in weekly meetings whenever he dared to contribute a thought. He assigned him a fellow manager to spy on him and to spread rumors that he did not play nicely with others, end quotes. In one of his performance reviews of John's work, the manager literally blamed him for doing his job too well. Quote, John is very knowledgeable almost to a fault, as it gets in the way at times when issues arise, end quotes. Thanks to Boeing's new policy of see something, don't say something, internal documents reported that manufacturing defects had dropped by 20% in a single year, not because they were actually producing less defects, but because Boeing was bullying its quality managers into staying quiet about the problems they found. But it didn't matter. As long as Boeing kept getting those taxpayer dollars, it could keep on chugging along as is. Even after Qatar Airlines openly refused to accept any more planes built in the Charleston plants, nothing changed. It was business as usual. When an undercover reporter asked Charleston staff whether they would fly on a Boeing 787 Dreamliner themselves, only 5 out of 15 said yes. And even the 5 that did say yes, didn't say yes because they were confident in the safety of their planes. One worker actually answered, quote, I probably would, but I have kind of a death wish too. John Barnett was so concerned about the safety of the 787 Dreamliners, when asked if he would fly on one of them, he answered,
I would change flights before I would fly a 787. I've told my family, please don't fly a 787. Fly something else. Try to get a different ticket.
That's how serious Boeing's issues were. But with everyone at Boeing going the extra mile to keep Barnett quiet, John Barnett was so concerned about the safety of 787 Dreamliners, in 2017 he had reached a turning point. He was having serious health problems and anxiety attacks as a result of the stress and public humiliation he faced at work, so he decided to take his complaints outside of Boeing. In January 2017, he filed an official complaint with OSHA, a government agency called the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. In his complaint, he listed all the issues he found in the 787 Dreamliners, as well as all the retaliation he faced for pointing out these problems. After that, the FAA came back and said that it had found clear evidence of all of Barnett's complaints, and that it was working with Boeing to get them resolved. But all Boeing had to do to shut down that investigation was to tell the FAA they had checked on all the problems, and that they promised that the problems weren't as serious as Barnett made them out to be. In the end, none of the planes with titanium shards in the floorboards or malfunctioning oxygen masks were recalled. Boeing didn't even have to notify the companies that had bought the bad planes. Barnett just couldn't take it anymore. He had given Boeing 32 years of his life, but less than 7 years at the Charleston plant put him at risk of a stress-related heart attack, according to his family doctor. So in 2017, he finally retired. He thought he could do more good outside the company, where he would be free to warn as many people as he wanted about the danger of Boeing's planes. For 4 years, he spent hours a day talking to reporters, trying to raise awareness about the issues Boeing was hiding, and doing everything he could to support his case against Boeing with OSHA. But in the end, John Barnett was just some lowly quality manager from Louisiana, and Boeing was one of the most powerful corporations in the world, and they had the full support of the US military behind it. And what did John Barnett have? A few emails and written complaints? There was no way he would ever win. With that in mind, it wasn't surprising when the OSHA case finally came to an end in 2021, and they ended up siding with Boeing, not Barnett, despite the FAA verifying all of Barnett's claims. Despite all the safety issues Boeing had between 2017 and 2021, Boeing had won. It could keep making shoddy planes with absolutely zero consequences. But even though Barnett had lost again, he wasn't a quitter. He knew how dangerous it would be to let Boeing get away with cutting corners, so he decided to take one last shot at holding the company responsible. Little did he know this decision would cost him his life.
It's so sad that Boeing went from caring about having the best quality to being a company that cuts corners and totally just wants to make the most money. I mean, it's just so sad, and it's like the root of all evil is the love of money, and it's really true. So for this last clip, before I get Opa and Jake's opinions, I'm going to call this clip "Taking on the Behemoth." So check this out.
When John Barnett left Boeing in 2017, he opened a separate lawsuit against the company, accusing them of intimidating and retaliating against him for blowing the whistle. Even though the OSHA case was closed, this whistleblowing suit was still in the works. For years after he left Boeing, the lawsuit stalled, but then the Alaska Airlines malfunction happened, and suddenly Barnett was back in the spotlight, warning people about the dangers of flying on Boeing planes.
But my concern is, what's the rest of the airplane? What's the rest of the condition of the airplane? And the reason my concern for that is, back in 2012, Boeing started removing inspection operations off their jobs. So it left the mechanics to buy off their own work. So what we're seeing with the door plug blowout is what I've seen with the rest of the airplane, as far as jobs not being completed properly, inspection steps being removed, issues being ignored. My concerns are with the 737 and the 787, because those programs have really embraced the theory that quality is overhead and non-value added. So those two programs have really put a strong effort into removing quality from the process. When I first started working at Charleston, I was in charge with pushing back defects to our suppliers.
Even worse, more Boeing employees were starting to come forward with their own complaints about being intimidated into staying quiet. To Boeing, Barnett was a 14-year headache that they just couldn't shake. So they vowed that this would be the last time they faced him in court. It was time to put the whole thing to bed. So they started expediting the case. One of the last steps before taking the case to court was to record Barnett's official testimony during a deposition. That meant Barnett would be questioned and cross-examined on camera by both his lawyers and Boeing's, and that would be used as his official testimony in the case. On March 2nd, 2024, Barnett arrived in Charleston, where the deposition was taking place. He checked into room 511 at a nearby Holiday Inn and started preparing for the upcoming questioning. On March 7, Barnett sat down for the first round of questions from his own lawyers. That session lasted around 4 hours. The next day, he was back to be cross-examined by Boeing's lawyers, who kept him talking for more than 7 hours. 7 hours of cross-examination by an expert legal team is enough to tire out anyone. So it was completely understandable when Barnett said he wanted to drive home to Louisiana that evening to take a few weeks break. But the Boeing lawyers refused. They insisted he continue his testimony the next day too. According to Barnett's lawyers, Barnett was quote the best witness they had ever seen, end quotes. His ability to accurately recall specific dates and details from memory was painting him as a trustworthy expert witness, which would make Boeing look very bad once the case went to trial. Maybe the Boeing lawyers thought that if they kept Barnett going when he was obviously getting tired, it would make him finally slip up. Maybe they just wanted to exhaust him to the point of discouragement. But unfortunately for them, instead of complaining, Barnett seemed happy to carry on. His lawyer described him as being in good spirits and looking forward to putting this phase of his life behind him. That night, he extended his stay at the Holiday Inn, got himself some dinner, and was seen by a hotel employee scrolling on his phone as he ate. There was no sign at all that he was upset or stressed. The next morning, Barnett's lawyers arrived at the offices where the deposition took place at around 10 a.m. Barnett had not shown up yet, but that wasn't really surprising. Earlier that morning, downtown Charleston had experienced one of the worst rainstorms they had ever seen. The entire place was flooded, so delays were inevitable. Barnett's lawyer had even called his room at the Holiday Inn at 9 that morning to check if he could pick him up on the way, but Barnett didn't answer. So they waited, sure that Barnett would show up at any moment, blaming the weather for his tardiness. Only he never did. Getting worried, his lawyer called the Holiday Inn directly. Well, I asked if he checked out, and they said no. I asked to be put to the room, and the phone just kept ringing. So then I asked if they checked the room. The Holiday Inn folks said his stuff's packed up but he's not there. Anxious over his client's well-being, the lawyer asked them to check if Barnett's car was still in the parking lots. After a few minutes, quote, the manager came back and told me his truck is still there and we called EMS. I can't tell you anything more, end quotes. Something was very wrong. Barnett's lawyers rushed to the hotel, believing John had suffered a heart attack, but what they found was something much more horrifying. According to the police, John Barnett had unalived himself in his car at around 9:30 that morning. His finger was still on the trigger of the gun, and a white note could be seen on the seat next to him. Police were called to the scene, and an investigation was opened into Barnett's death. The official results? That his death was self-inflicted. But that is literally all we know. Up until now, no details regarding Barnett's death has been made public. What was on the white piece of paper next to him? No one knows. What does the security footage of the hotel reveal about how, when, and why he did it? Or if he was alone? No one knows. The cops aren't giving anybody any details, which just makes everything seem even more suspicious. Why would Barnett agree to another day of questioning if he was planning on checking out early? Why would he extend his stay at the hotel? How could he have been in such good spirits the day before if this was what he was thinking about? And then there's the really big elephant in the room. Why would John Barnett tell a close family friend, quote, if anything happens, it's not, end quotes, just months before unaliving himself, right on the cusp of the lawsuit that finally stood to expose a $100 billion company that he spent the last 1.5 decades of his life fighting? Business tycoons in weaker countries assassinate people all the time. Is it that far-fetched that an American military-industrial giant would do the same in today's America? You tell me. According to his family, even if Boeing didn't directly cause Barnett's death, they are still responsible.
Oh, yes. That would wear anybody down after, I don't know whether it's 7 or 8 years.
Something he endured constantly.
He wasn't trying to hurt Boeing. He was trying to save Boeing. He saw this coming, and he said at some point, you know, this is all going to come down on Boeing.
Do you blame Boeing?
I think if this hadn't gone on so long, I'd still have my son.
And in a sad twist of fate, just 2 days after John Barnett's death, at least 50 people were injured when a Boeing 787 Dreamliner took a sudden nosedive on a domestic flight in Australia due to technical failures. And on April 17, 2024, another Boeing employee, Sam Salapur, testified against the company on Capitol Hill, accusing it of overlooking significant defects in the name of production. And just like John Barnett, Boeing strongly denies Sam's claims and insists that none of the issues raised, quote, present any safety concerns, end quotes. No matter if Boeing was directly involved in his death or not, it's clear that John Barnett conveniently unaliving himself was the single greatest thing that could have ever happened to Boeing. And as of right now, it still doesn't look like the 787 Dreamliners have been fixed, so maybe try to avoid those flights for now like John Barnett advised. Before you book a flight, you can simply Google the flight number to see which airplane model it's on.
So definitely do that before you get on an airplane. And that's all I got for Boeing and the man that they silenced, in my opinion. I have to say that. Now I want to hear from Opa and Jake. Like, what are your thoughts? Do you think he was sewer slided? Or do you think, you know, he just happened to sluricide himself? Or just what are your overall thoughts about the whole situation?
Ooh. Well, you know, it makes me think that you need to take an insurance policy out before you go flying anytime soon,
Yep.
for one. I think it's very suspicious that the key witness in a trial of that magnitude, you know, did that to himself. And I'm very about what was actually on that note. I don't know if they released that, but I'm very suspicious of that whole series of events. It reminds me of the Hillary Clinton related, you know, events of that nature, of, you know, and people, you know, around other political figures that have had that happen. And so that is very peculiar to me. What I think is they're trying to make air travel very dangerous. I think before it used to be said that it's safer to fly an airplane than it is to ride in a car. But the significance of that is they don't want people traveling to the extent that they are now. And so air travel is one of those liberties that people have had that have allowed us to explore the whole world, to go from sea to shining sea, and at, for the most part, relatively little cost. And so what they want is air travel for the cattle to be very dangerous and expensive, and they want only people with a large amount of money to be doing this exclusive, you know, flight travel in the near future, because it's easier to control people that have to go through checkpoints. And you already see them doing that with the TSA and the airports trying to implement control. But the next level of this is the monetary greed that's behind the low maintenance of these airlines. I mean, the reason they're not catching all of these issues is because they're cutting corners. Because if anybody has dealt with airlines before, you already know that profit is their number one priority. And man, it's not a surprise to see things starting to fall apart in that realm of travel, because really when the love of money is somewhere, you know, you find the root of all evil, right? So yeah, that's what I see with this circumstance.
What about you, Opa? What are your thoughts?
Well, I know that Boeing is under great pressure from competition from Airbus. They're now ahead of Boeing, actually, as far as technology, as far as sales and everything else. So Boeing is scrambling, trying to regain their number one position, and one of the ways is to cut costs, cut corners, whatever they have to do to get more planes out. And they're quickly redesigning planes to compete with the competition, rather than doing what they were doing in the past, which was designing from the ground up a new plane. The 737 is a great example of it. The 737 MAX, basically, they stuck some bigger engines on there, made it longer, but the bigger engines, you know, wouldn't fit on the pylons that the original 737 was designed for, so they moved them forward, and of course that changed the whole flyability of the airplane. So they added some software to fly the plane, or make adjustments to fly the plane, so that the pilots who did fly older 737s could still fly the new ones. Even now, Boeing is having problems. The FAA has not certified the 737 MAX 7s, which are planes that Southwest Airlines is waiting for, because of problems with the de-icers around the engine themselves. And they also have the 737-10s that are being withheld from United Airlines because of of similar problems, and there still continue to be problems with the Dreamliner, the 787s. On top of that, you look at, we're talking about NASA and the Starship, or whatever I think it's called, I can't even remember. That thing is so far behind. That's supposed to have been between SpaceX and Boeing. We're going to have 2 capsules to be able to shuttle the astronauts up to the space station back and forth. And my God, I mean, it's now, you know, SpaceX has been the one doing it, and the Starliner has yet to get off the ground with all of the problems they have, and most of them are leaks and what have you that have to do with quality control. So
do you think this guy was taken out?
Take what out?
He was taken out, like he was silenced on purpose?
Oh yeah, I think it's a highly, highly suspicious. Especially, you know, what reason would he have to do it?
Yep. Well, and you guys let me know at home in the comment section what you guys think about it. Was he sewer slided? Make sure you use the proper terminology. Or did he do it to himself? Or you guys just let me know what you think. So now I'm going to make Jake laugh again and hopefully make you guys laugh again. For this last clip of my History's Mysteries, it has nothing to do with the history, but enjoy Volume 5 of Pranking the Scammer. So enjoy.
Hello? Yeah. Hi, ma'am. How you doing today? I'm doing all right. How are you doing? Okay, that's great. Well, my name is Daniel Freeman, and I'm calling you from Senior Financial Solutions. Well, the reason we're calling you today, in reference to your NFI financial planning, we wanted to update you regarding brand new state-regulated non-expense whole life insurance plan that are designed to cover 100% policy. I'm sorry?
I said, oh, wow, that's amazing.
What's your name, ma'am?
My name is Maya.
What's your name?
My name is Maya, M-A-Y, yeah, M-A-Y-A, Maya.
And what's your last name?
It's kind of hard to pronounce, but it's B-U-T-T-R-E-K-S. Maya Buttrick.
B-U-T-R-E. Buttrick, okay. I did not find here your name, so that's why I'm just asking you.
Okay. It's M-A-Y-A, okay, and then my last name is B-U-T-T-R-E-E-K-S.
Okay, I got it now. Are you residing in Texas, right?
Yes, but before we move forward, I just want to make sure you got my name right in the system. Can you please repeat it back to me, sir?
Maya Buttrick.
Yes, your butt does reek.
That's reek or Buttrick?
Yeah, your butt reeks, sir.
That's totally wrong, okay? You have a great day. Don't waste our time. Bye-bye.
So the boss got mad at me. Maya butt reeks. Still not my best one.
Oh, man.
But it's fun to get him to say it.
Yeah, it only counts if they say it back to you. That's how I feel.
Oh, yeah. So if you guys got any more names that you want me to do, leave them in the comment section because I'm almost out. All right, well, you got some memes for me, Jake?
Yes, we do.
All right, meet me up.
I know you're a little younger than I am. I've adopted the attitude of the great Negro Leagues, went on to become Negro.
Meet me up.
Oh, man. Woke companies at 11:59 p.m. on May 31st. Ooh,
Yep.
Can't wait. Oh, my goodness. walking into the supermarket during June. Dodge. Whoa. Oh, man. But just don't forget, the very first Pride Month looked more like this, right? Satan being cast out of heaven. You'll be told this summer to lower your AC usage to stop overwhelming the electric grid, while also being told to drive electric cars. Ooh. Just remember, NASA lost 14,000 reels of science data from the fake moon landing. Accidentally, right?
Yeah.
Talking of the electric grid, have you ever noticed that these giant, like, what are they called? What are these?
I think they're power lines.
Yeah. Have you ever noticed that power lines kind of look like giant upside down, or giant goat heads?
Yeah, my dad always told me that when we were driving. He was like, "Don't those look like goat heads?" And I was like, "Yeah, they do actually." We used to have them right by our house.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Shout out to the truckies leaving bottles of apple juice for thirsty hitchhikers. Doing your part.
That's great.
I get really upset by people who use the wrong word and don't have the humility to admit it. I do that all the time. Oh, man. 3 seconds after you order something on Amazon Prime. Is it here yet? Is it here yet? It's so true.
Every time you hear a car go by.
Let this be the hour when we draw our swords together. Look at my sword. Oh, yeah. All right. All right. This is an actual photo of me at every campfire I've ever been to.
Oh, yeah, me too. We have matching
You know
photos.
that saying that the smoke chases after beauty? Have you ever heard that?
But I believe you.
Check this picture out. 10 wars, 0 trials. Enough said.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's all the memes for this week, guys.
All right, Jake, thank you for another great current news and memes as always. Opa, thank you for another great Opus Corner. I hope you guys enjoyed today's history segment, or history's mystery segment, and hope you enjoyed today's episode as a whole. So stay awake, not woke, subscribe, and stay tuned. If you like what we do here on Skiba News Nation, please like and subscribe, and also share with others so that we can grow the biggest truth-seeking community on the internet. Huge shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. We couldn't do this show without you, so I just wanted to say thank you. And if you want to help support us, go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation.